Good evening. I would like to call to order the Lake Washington School District Board of Directors May 7th, 2012 meeting. Board has spent a work session in meeting with our foundation board and having a chance to talk with them, and as they're getting ready for their fundraising luncheon, which is coming up later this month. And so I'll do a little plug for them. And anybody interested in attending can go online and find out about that. And we've also had an update on facilities and construction that's happening, because we've got lots of that going on in our district at this time. Chris Carlson is excused for this meeting, as is Dr. Kimball. So I will now entertain a motion to approve the agenda. And the only reason you have a change in front of you was there was a typo on one of the people's names on the personnel report. So
move approval of the agenda with the typographical correction.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? You guys have to say aye, too, you know, not just move in second. Okay. Our host school.
Yes, as you know, each meeting we have a host school that comes and tells us about their school and focuses on their academic program, including their vision for student learning, their focus on their continuous improvement process plan, their focus on student achievement, and their unique aspects to their school. So tonight we have Kelly Clapp, principal at Redmond Junior High, here to present.
Thank you. You will notice that the slide up there, it says Redmond Middle School. It's because we're in the middle of Redmond Junior High and becoming Redmond Middle School, so we chose to have this slide say Redmond Middle School. But thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk about our school. This is my second year at Redmond Junior High, and I have absolutely loved being here. Both Assistant Principal Sean Cassidy and myself are very fortunate to work with a talented and committed staff, as well as a supportive community. And speaking of community, I would like to point out our PTSA and the work that they did and thank them. The student work that you see reflected around the boardroom was put up by our PTSA, and as well as the food provided for tonight, and they did a fabulous job. But even more importantly, they've been incredibly supportive anytime we have needed anything, anytime and anywhere. So I know some of them, our president and some other members are here, so they're there, so thank you. We're proud of our academic programs and achievements at our school. We don't get to highlight everything, but here are a couple. For example, we house the Quest program. Through 8th grade Quest, students are afforded the opportunity to compete in the National History Day competition, as well as some 9th graders who choose to volunteer on their own. So this year we had a total of 72 students compete at the regional competition. Out of those 72 students, 16 went on to state competition. And then this is just hot off the presses. As of this weekend, we have 5 students who are going on to the national competition at the University of Maryland. And so we'll be there in June, and that's really awesome. Math has been a learning focus for our school. Last year, 98.1% of our students met standard on, or passed the EOC in geometry, and 86.2 students passed in algebra. And additionally, our math department has looked at doing some different things to improve student learning. One example is they decided as a team to adjust their grading practices to assure that grades are based on what students know and are able to do, as opposed to just timeliness and completion of assignments. Students are allowed to do retakes of larger assignments and assessments, and have to demonstrate understanding of errors before they are allowed to do this. That really forces kids to think about their thinking and think about their own learning. We have an intervention called Homework Lunch that we call HOWL, is the acronym for students who struggle with homework completion. And this year, and listen to this number carefully, 2,022 assignments were completed as of March 16th out of 2,866 possible missing assignments. 50% of our students were served by HOWL this year, and we think that's an incredible number. Our after-school study hour is popular and always full. This is where volunteers come in and assist our students after school, whether they need extra help or just time to do their assignments or work that they have. We have developed a mission and vision in our school. We started last year looking at what the district had and to make sure that we supported the district mission and vision. And then from there, we went on and developed our commitments. And these commitments will follow us into Redmond Middle School. A mission and vision kind of drives your belief statements and commitments about what are you really going to do. So we have 9 of them. I'm going to read through these, but we agreed as a staff unanimously. These are the ones that we wanted to support. And also this year, we have recently developed a draft of a strategic plan to help us prioritize our work more efficiently and focus on the work that needs to be done that will be most meaningful for student achievement. You really can't read it, but you will notice it looks a little bit like the district strategic plan for middle schools. We kind of added our own things that we need to work on for a building with that of the district so that our staff can see the whole big picture of the work that needs to be done. It helps people focus a little bit better. And this strategic plan will come in handy as we've been doing a lot of work this year in preparation for something that you may have heard of called reconfiguration. Shifting to a middle school model has allowed us to rethink our organizations and structures and systems, everything we need to do to implement what processes we need to do to help students learn more. We are also examining our instructional practices, and we expect that our new schedule will allow for a more personalized approach to instruction, as well as the flexibility of what we do during those chunks of time. And we are trying to become better learners ourselves and modeling what we are trying to do as an entire district. This year, our staff got to self-select in learning teams, and with a focus on the following topics: differentiation, grading practices, response to intervention, culture, and how to teach in a longer block of time, and that's in preparation for next year. And each learning team was tasked with a specific goal or goals, and then they went about and did different learning activities such as book studies, they visited other schools, and they read research. And each team then shared their learning with the rest of the staff, so we all have some research-based resources and tools and ideas to use for next year and as we prepare to make the shift. Now, at this time, I'd like to introduce Assistant Principal Sean Cassidy.
Hello, thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. One of the things before I start, I just wanted to praise our teachers and our staff who are working in our school tirelessly every day for our students. They're part of this leadership. They're part of the leadership around our new plan, and they are also extremely hard workers for developing what our new middle school will look like next year. And while it's sad to see some of them leaving as they transition to being high school teachers, it's also exciting to welcome in new talented teachers from elementary and a new group of people to learn from as we move forward. One of the learning teams that focused on a new and improved homeroom. This is what we're calling PACE. PACE stands for Practice, Activity, Challenge, and Enrichment. Every other week on Monday, we'll be teaching students a specific soft skill, such as how to use their student agenda, how to use their email effectively, how to work through netbooks, which will be new for us, or even something note-taking, which goes on with the same vocabulary from teacher to teacher to teacher. Students will then show teachers evidence of applying this new skill in one of their classes every other Friday. Now, in between, teachers have the opportunity to have mandatory interventions or enrichment activities for their students and kind of self-select ways to creatively spend more time with the students when no extra time is being given. And at the end of the 2-week cycle, if students are in good standing, they'll get to self-select a fun activity during PACE time, such as floor hockey or video games or crafts or reading or even music. It's an opportunity for them to practice some of those pieces of the middle school belief statement that we worked on last winter as principals, such as creating academic and social interventions, practicing self-advocacy and independence for students, as well as providing a varied opportunities for extracurricular participation. Now, our bell schedule, as you look on the screen, represents research from national, state, and local research, as well as a desire to work with students for an extended period of time. By extending the instructional time and reducing our passing, our transition periods, we've actually been able to add 9 hours of instruction to each period over the course of the year. Additional time will also be allowed for teachers to have more experiential and more authentic tasks that they couldn't do in a normal 50-minute day. And also allow teachers to be more flexible in collaboration with each other to kind of work towards solutions to meet those goals and to work together. We're also looking at a new model for serving our students in special education and safety nets. We're using this term as co-teaching. As we are constantly evolving as a staff, trying to improve our practice, we've examined the transition between elementary and high school. There were few students who were able to bridge the gap between special education classes into the general education classes, and we need to find out a way where we can make that happen. With guidance and research on local special education models from Wynn Spalding, our special education staff, and visits to Kirkland Junior High and Eckstein Middle at Seattle, we're excited about some of the possibilities that we're currently bringing to Redmond Junior High and next to Redmond Middle. In short, co-teaching is an effective, evidence-based instructional strategy in which two or more professionals, this could be a general education teacher, a special education teacher, an ELL teacher, and even an SLP, speech-language pathologist, where they share responsibility for the same group of students and work collaboratively to add instructional value to enhance their efforts. Now, this is currently being done by a few by a few teachers at our school, but we're going to expand upon that greatly, where all of them are in that model, or as many as we can, based on staffing. That's also happening at Kirkland, and we're looking forward to working with Kirkland and other schools who are going through this, trying out this co-teaching model. The Redmond Junior School student culture is outstanding, and we want to continue that in the middle school. And I can't praise enough our students for their leadership, for their compassion to others, and their willingness to work hard towards having fun. As a person who spends time at RJH, and over the last 7 years I've seen evidence of this, you can see how it goes beyond the posters and the uniforms. Okay, there's some pictures for you. It goes beyond that and actually extends to things like service programs, peer relationships, and opportunities to mature and to develop a young person's sense of their own self. So one of the things we had the opportunity to do is we have a fine example of one of our junior high students, in Ms. Jennifer Ye, who we've asked to represent us tonight with a few of her words.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Ye, and I'm a 9th grader at Redmond Junior High. So all of our students come from completely different backgrounds with different ethnic and cultural identities, friends, and interests. And at lunch, different cliques are pretty apparent, but despite these outward differences, I realized that everyone can relate with one another because of common age, opportunities, and environment. So I used to be a really shy student, and I didn't really make any effort to be involved in our school in any way. And it's not that I didn't have the opportunity, it's that I didn't really want to, and because I was scared to take this chance. But in 8th grade, I applied for Honor Society, and I started going to the after-school study hour and helping kids who needed help. And there was a ton of different people there. There's people from the jocks, the questies, even the popular 8th grade people. But I realized that through all our weaknesses, our strengths, and our fears, despite our differences, we're all pretty much the same. So through attaining my hours for Honor Society back in 8th grade, I realized how much I love helping people, because when you change someone's life, the person you're helping is actually changing your life, because you're forced out of your own personal bubble and introduced into this world of diversity. And that was my goal this year, to get out of my personal bubble, and I think Redmond Junior High was just the perfect place for me to do this. So being in the Quest program for 4 years, 9th grade was a huge change when we were given the choice to enter the honors program. And you get a mix of Quest students and non-Quest students, and you depart from people who you've been with for years, and you meet new people. And it was pretty inspiring to hear their ideas, their experiences, and work on projects with them. Aside from academics, I signed up for badminton, and no, I'm not really good at it, but I love how these sports allow you to either push yourself to the top at varsity, or you can just enjoy being able to meet new people. And on another note, music is my forte. I'm a violinist and a pianist, and from 7th grade to 9th grade, I've been involved in Redmond Junior High's orchestra, and our amazing teacher, Mrs. Ferguson, has helped us all get out of our comfort zone over the years, and I love how she can learn so much about each and every single one just by the way we each behave and play. And although she doesn't say it, she automatically knows how to help us grow. Performing at concerts and going on field trip has definitely helped our orchestra become a family. And Redmond Junior High has an amazing staff. Every teacher, advisor, principal, everyone there is really easy to talk to and really understanding. And this was really helpful when my friend Christina Diaz and I decided to execute this project, and it was called the Red Balloon Project. We wanted to create a group where students could come together and plan outreach events that would help people both locally and abroad. And at our first meeting, there was about 25 people who showed up. And we see these people every single day, sitting at different lunch tables, talking about different things, and associating with different people. But it was amazing how we were all united by this common interest, and it was amazing and really inspiring for us. Our first project is a coin drive for Shepherd Fields Children's Orphanage in China, and it's for children with special needs. And this event actually starts today, so we're really excited to see how it turns out. So these experiences may not be as exciting as some life-changing memories you have had, but to me, I know that years from now, I'm going to look back and remember my junior high days at Redmond Junior High, because I've learned that school is where everyone can lend a helping hand, even unknowingly, because we all learn from one another, given such great opportunities in a great environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you, board, for listening to our brief little presentation. It's not everything that we could say about our school, certainly, but we do appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and appreciate your coming this evening and sharing with us. And I can't believe she was a shy young lady. That was really well done. Much appreciated.
It's great. Thanks, Kelly and Sean. We know you've been working really hard and working with your staff on plans for shifting to the middle school model. So it was fun to hear and have you share all the specifics. So thanks.
Okay. So our next time, we've got two big occasions coming up to recognize as far as proclamations go. And do we want to have Kevin come up first, or you want me to read first?
I'll read first.
Okay. As I said, we have two groups of people that we'd like to recognize who are incredibly important to every student in our district. And the first is Teacher Appreciation and National Teacher Day. So I'm going to read the proclamation, and we have Kevin Thiele with us today as well. Whereas teachers work to open students' minds to ideas, knowledge, and dreams, and keep American democracy alive by laying the foundation for good citizenship. And whereas teachers continue to influence us long after our school days are only memories. And whereas teachers fill many roles as explorers, listeners, mentors, motivators, and role models. And whereas the 1,548 teachers in the Lake Washington School District deserve recognition for their hard work to help students to achieve the district's mission of every student future ready. Therefore, we, the Lake Washington School District Board of Directors, do hereby proclaim May 7th through 11th, 2012, and Tuesday, May 8th, 2012, as Teacher Appreciation Week and National Teacher Day in the Lake Washington School District.
Thanks, Jackie. I also just want to take a moment to say a few words and have Kevin Thiele, President of the Lake Washington Education Association, you can go ahead and step forward, and we'll have you accept the proclamation on behalf of our teachers and also invite you to say a few words. But as I was thinking about the proclamation this evening, the fact that teaching is such an incredibly complex profession really comes to mind. Teaching is physically demanding, emotionally demanding, cognitively demanding. And in fact, recent research points to the fact that teachers make hundreds of non-trivial decisions every day involving instruction, classroom environment, professional responsibilities. And teaching's been compared to conducting an orchestra or cultivating a garden. Teachers are compared sometimes to coaches and engineers and artists. And the fact that planning for a productive and engaging classroom environment for every single diverse student is no easy task. There's a quote that many of us know that is by William Butler Yeats that says, "Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire." And each and every day, we depend on teachers in our organization to ignite the fire for learning for our students. And so we really do take this opportunity to recognize them seriously. And I want to hand it over to Kevin here to accept the proclamation.
Well, this is really a great honor to accept this on behalf of all the teachers in the Lake Washington School District. This is a highlight of the year to come here and to accept this, because I'm so proud of the teachers in our school district. I think they're phenomenal. We just have an incredible staff that works so hard for students and for parents and for the community. So it's again, an honor to do this. You know, we couldn't do it without the support of you as a board of directors and administration. It is just so incredible to see that level of support in our community, our parents, our PTSA, our taxpayers, community members, all coming together to make sure that all the students in our school district have a high-quality public education. So it's, again, an honor to accept this, and I do appreciate on behalf of all of our teachers, again, all the support that all of you give to help us make it happen and to make this a great place for kids to learn.
Thank you, Kevin. I want to thank you, Kevin, for coming, but also, you know, I don't think we say often thank you enough on a daily basis to our teachers and the work that they do. So it's nice that we are able to do this, you know, today and this week. So, and I know there's lots of fun things that go on in the various buildings as our parents and students begin to say thank you to all the staff. So that's just really great for them to do, too. The other event that we're recognizing is the School Nurse Day. And I like to remind folks that this is a person that many people in our district don't realize that we either have or wonder why there isn't one per building, and we can talk about that to the legislators. But they are an integral and important part of what goes on in our schools and for our students, especially students who may have special health needs and other things like that that impact their learning sometimes and their being at school, and they work very closely with our buildings. So with that, whereas children today face more complex and life-threatening health problems requiring care in the school, and whereas all students have the right to have their health needs safely met while in the school setting, and whereas school nurses are professional nurses who advance the well-being, academic success, and lifelong achievements of all students by providing a critical safety net for our nation's most fragile children, and whereas school nurses understand the link between health and learning and are in the position to make a positive difference for children every day. Therefore, we, the members of the Lake Washington School District Board of Directors, hereby proclaim Wednesday, May 9th, 2012, as School Nurse Day in the Lake Washington School District. And I know we have some people here in the audience.
We do have some people here, and I would like to invite Paul Vine, our Director of Special Services, and Nancy Johnson, our Nurse Supervisor, up. And I do want to say a couple of words about our nurses as well. Similar to teaching, nursing is a physically and emotionally and cognitively demanding profession. And as Jackie mentioned, our nurses are critical members of our school district staff. They serve all of our 51 schools, all of our 912 students, and we have 15 nurses who are responsible to promote health and safety, to intervene with actual and potential problems, to provide education and case management services, and to actively collaborate with students, families, communities, school staff, and district employees. Now, I couldn't do this for teacher appreciation, given the number of teachers that we have, but I think I do have time to name by name the 15 school nurses that we have on staff, and then I'll turn it over to Paul and Nancy. The names of these nurses: Agatha Equimensa, Susan Altman, Karen Chambers, Katie Durbin, Victoria Finley, Jody Becker, Molly Hutchins, Karen James, Nancy Johnson, Valerie Martin, Joyce Rader, Amy Jo Lewis, Elaine Shepard, Trish Simpson, and Teresa Kraft. So,
Okay.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the kind words. And I do feel our district's very fortunate to have such a dedicated group of nurses that come ready to help every day, keep students safe. They're caring, they're compassionate, and I enjoy working with each and every one of them. So thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Nancy for all our hard work supervising our nurses, and I really think, you know, we educate the whole child, and the whole child includes our health services and really supporting our kids, not just by their academics, but all of their health needs and other emotional needs they have. And I really appreciate the board's support and our taxpayers' support and our staff that work with all of our nurses to make sure we get the needs for the kids where they really need them. And we thank you for this day. So. You can be the recipient. You're the nurse.
You can accept this on behalf of all of them. Thank you very much. They have a special spot in my heart. I was part of them before I was on the board, so they were near and dear to me. And at that time, we only had 3, so we've come a long way, but I still we could do more. And that's, as I said, comes back with legislature. Okay, the next part of our agenda is time for public comment, and I do have a few people who have signed up, so I'd like to lay out the ground rules for this evening and remind people what happens. And I would ask you to come to the center podium when I call your name, and if you would then introduce yourself and let us know what school area that you reside in. You have 3 minutes to speak, and we do have a monitoring time stop clock over here, so when you see the yellow light, indicates you have about a minute left, and so I would ask that you be winding up your remarks, because when the red light comes on, it beeps, and we'd like you to be concluding at that time. So, I have Amy Yates first to come up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Do I need to wait for a green
No,
light?
just
Okay.
you start. Diane will take care of that.
Fabulous. My name is Amy Yates, and I have a second grader currently at A.G. Bell Elementary, and my son will be starting kindergarten there next year. I am here tonight to discuss the construction that's going on at our school currently, and I assume you're all aware that that construction halted in late February. And I'm here to, I guess, let you all know how that's impacted our community. We have made a list, which I think was just passed around, of 18 different activities that we have not been able to hold this school year at A.G. Bell due to the construction. We lost our gym. We've lost half of the facilities, so to speak. And we were told that we would have a completed gym by the end of this calendar year, so halfway through next school year. Obviously, there's a lot of concern amongst parents and staff that that timeline could be pushed out, thus impacting the students further. And first, my hope is that that is still very realistic and possible, that time frame. And if not, I hope that the board will be willing to work with the community at Bell on providing an on-site option to solve our problem. We know that David Larson has been very responsive and helpful in trying to get other places for us to hold things. For instance, our end-of-the-year assembly at Rose Hill Elementary. It's harder for some of the families and to get to other locations, and it does impact our community kind of spirit. And just if you see some of the little things that the kids don't get to do, like multicultural night or dinosaur show night or those kind of fun things. So we're hoping that we'll only have to do that for 1.5 years and not a whole 2 years, is I guess why we're here. We really do need a facility or something at Bell. And with that said, I understand that the contractors that are bidding on it came to our school May 2nd, and that the open bids are due by the 16th of May, and that hopefully the board will review and approve one of those at the May 21st meeting, and please let me know if I'm completely off on those dates. But again, I guess as a parent in the Bell community, I hope that you'll feel our sense of urgency in getting this construction underway as soon as possible. I think it would really boost the morale of the staff, the parents, the community, to see something started, see some trucks coming again before the end of the school year. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. And I believe Kim is also going to speak on this topic, and I think that's just the two. So send Forrest.
Good evening, everyone. I am Kim Malcolm. I'm the incoming president at the PTSA at A.G. Bell Elementary. I can't add too much more to what Amy Yates said, extremely eloquent and well put. I also just want to point out we have a couple of other very engaged and involved parents with us tonight from Bell, Leah Ng and Nick Gabriel. And they do indeed represent our parent community. And we have been here at the PTSA board, we've been hearing a lot from parents wondering what's going on. So I would encourage you, if possible, to try to open up the communication gates a little bit more with us. We would appreciate it. We do understand that we have a unique and challenging site, but I do want to say that our staff has been stellar in adapting to those circumstances. But our kids don't know what they're missing if they don't get it, but we know it. And I think heading into a second year without a gym, without a community gathering space where we can celebrate together and mark passages and changes together, it really does start to grind down on folks. So I'm looking forward to hearing what your decision is going to be by the end of May. I encourage you to move forward in a timely manner and get that contractor hitting the ground running the day after your decision. I don't know why you're laughing. There are a couple of key questions that parents have been asking me, and I do want to pass them along to you, and I look forward to hearing your answers at a later time. Will the gymnasium be available for student use early, prior to the final construction completion? And what will the process be if the bids submitted do not make the proposed or approved budget? That's already happened to us once. So we're wondering, what is Plan C at this point? Thank you very much for your consideration. Do you want to direct them to
Yes.
Forrest?
And was there anyone else speaking on this topic for public comment? No. Good. Okay. So earlier this evening, we had a work session with the board, which happened to be facilities update. So this is serendipitous timing that our Director of Support Services, Forrest Miller, is here, and we just came from a work session before the board meeting tonight. So I'm going to ask Forrest, I saw him wave, there's Forrest, he can step out into the foyer with you and try to provide answers to the questions that you posed and ensure that you have all the updated and accurate information. And whatever, he can also follow up with you if there's certain questions that he's unable to answer this evening. But I want to make that connection right now with you all and Forrest. So thank you. And we do understand your passion for your students and appreciate the list that you gave us. This is helpful. And I'm sure you have some more copies, so you can provide one to Forrest as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Forrest. Okay, I have Nate Newberry. Yes, come forward and tell us where you're from and what you'd like to share with us.
Okay, my name is Nate Newberry, and I have three sons that are currently within the Einstein Elementary school boundaries. And recently at school, it kind of had something that was rather concerning to me. I thought I would like to bring it to the ward's board. My third grade son, he's autistic, and he was in his class, and they were doing some internet research or internet activities, and he got on a video game or whatever, and then he slammed his computer down or whatever. He got upset because somebody caught him, and I thought that was a little bit silly and maybe not appropriate, but what concerned me more was that he had access to be able to get on a computer game on the internet, and so therefore some of my concerns, my wife's concerns as well, was internet availability and usage. it seems that the Lake Washington School District internet usage policy for the students is really, seems to be either vague or really not very existent. So one of the reactions, which was great, was directly from the teacher. She said, she would turn desks so that she could monitor screens more effectively, and I thought that that was a great thing on her part. But that was about all she could do to offer solutions to the issue and my concerns. I realized that we have a land school system that is not yet implemented. I'm not sure if that is due to budgetary concerns or anything of that nature, but that's not yet brought forth. I also realized that there's not really a filter program or a set of filters so that kids cannot access pornography and or violence on the internet. I am very, very familiar with many other students and within our community and within the Lake Washington School District, and their sons and daughters have also seen either inadvertently or on purpose these types of materials, whether through various means that I won't really elaborate on. But I also realized that the teacher said that they can block sites physically. I don't know if you're aware, but there is 4.3 million pornography sites. That is 25% of all websites on the internet. And that I don't think is really a physical possibility. I don't think that that type of enforcement is really possible. My biggest concerns about pornography on the internet is that 25% of all searches made on the internet are for pornographic materials. 40% of the inadvertent exposures to internet happen through an innocent word search. The average age of a child who views pornography the first time is 11. 11 years old, that's what, a fourth grader or a fifth grader? They're able to view pornography at our schools. And I think that that's not okay. I mean, the rate of pregnancy, STDs, teenage rape in our country is skyrocketing. And again, these things are based on kids and adults and access to pornography. And I think, I'll go into this in a second. Violence is the other thing. The AMA quotes, the AMA quotes that many organizations like the American Medical Association, American Psychological Association, and the United States Attorney General have all agreed that viewing media violence is linked to violence in society. Again, we've seen a rash of increase of violence within our schools through bullying, beatings, and murder, even suicide. All these things I think are very relatable to accessing inappropriate materials on the internet. I call upon the board to please take action, do something. I realize that part of the whole purpose is a protection of First Amendment rights, but I also feel that the First Amendment does not, it's covered, our radar movies and everything else that, we have protections in place for.
I'm going to have to ask you to bring it to an end,
Yes,
but I don't mean that to say that your points are not important points and that those
Yes,
are
ma'am.
certainly very valid concerns. I do know we do have policy in the district, so I'm going to have Dr. Pierce, either we can capture your name and information and make sure someone from our district.
It seems that that policy is ineffectual, and I would like to see it affected. If there is a good policy, great. But again, I've seen it be very ineffectual.
Well, and what I would like to do is connect you with that person, and then you can share your concerns, and maybe there are some holes that need to be re-looked at. The internet, unfortunately, is a moving object and change with time. But we certainly want to address those issues, I know, in the district, because
I appreciate your time.
we do not want children to have those experiences.
And I know that you don't, and I don't want to be an attacking individual or complaining parent, but I do have valid concerns, and it's not just for my children, it's for all of them. So,
We do,
thank you.
so we want to be sure and capture your information, too.
Right, and Tracy will get us a report because we have very tight controls. I mean, I've been blocked from very innocuous sites.
Because I know there's sometimes we can't get into things.
Yes, but you also have to realize that our children are way more versed in internet
We understand that.
technology.
So something went wrong, and that's what she has staff that will address that.
Okay, thank you.
It is not our intent that any of those things are accessible. We have very strict controls.
And if you would come over so we can capture your information, so we make sure that we get you connected.
And games?
Because if John was here today,
We don't
I would
allow
start
access to
John
internet
again.
games. Well, you'll let us know, because I
Yes.
didn't think the kids had access to internet games at all at
And it probably wouldn't hurt to have an update on what our policy, maybe we could do a follow-up at the next board meeting for the public as well, to know what our policy really is
Especially
currently.
with netbooks
And
coming down the
sure,
line.
yes. And I know it's an area.
yes.
Yes, and I know it's an area that we all have asked about over time, both as board, as parents, as staff. It's
Well,
an
if
ongoing
something-
monitoring issue.
Yeah. Well, and our tech person's not here tonight. John's
Yes,
gone.
otherwise I would have had him talk with John. Okay, next person is Angela Brady.
Hi, I was here last month, Angela Brady, and I live up on Education Hill. I was told in an email that I couldn't repeat anything that I mentioned last month, so that kind of flustered all my comments, so I'm not trying to intentionally repeat something. I have a couple of quotes I wanted to start with first. One, this is from the Board of Education versus PICO. Quote, "It is fair to say that no single agency of government at any level is closer to the people whom it serves than the typical school board." This is from a former school board member in the United States Supreme Court, Justice Lewis F. Powell. Also, this is a statement from the case of the United States Supreme Court versus the ALA. This is going to tie together, and you're taking my time.
We will reset your time.
Okay.
I'm going to let you do at least a 2 or 3 sentence start, so people who are listening have an idea of where you, and
It's
remind the
gonna-
board your beginning issue, and then you can continue. I'm sorry, I don't know who told you could repeat anything, so it wasn't me.
Catherine, right.
Okay, but if you would just give us a brief reminder.
I'll just do one sentence, that's
Okay,
fine.
and then we will let you start your time, and then you can go on. I didn't
Okay,
mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine, that's fine. Okay, the topic last month was on the library materials.
Okay.
In the school. So those first couple of comments that I just mentioned are just reaffirming your power as a school board and the effect of school board decisions in policies. So this one I think is good too. This is against the American Library Association, where the United States actually won. This has to do with the SIPA laws that actually are with the internet as well. Quote, "The interest in protecting young library users from material inappropriate for minors is legitimate." I say that because in conversations with administrators in the district, it seems like I'm being put down for my concerns. And another quote just has to do with the WSSDA on local school boards being in charge of local policy, and you are indeed control of local policy. There's nobody above you that takes that right away from you. As far as policy, what I tried to mention last month was that I wanted to recommend that parents are more involved in our library materials. Right now, they're not. There is no reviewing board of parents at all. The librarians rely on other review boards like the ALA, the School Library Journal, Kirkus Reviews, and I would just really appreciate more parental involvement. So I've got to skip around because I was told I couldn't repeat things. One of the reasons I mentioned the parental involvement is there seems to be a double standard in your district policies. It sounds like when you're going through your materials that all of it is good and great and fine and dandy, and that parents do have a role in what our children are learning and seeing and reading. And the reality is that we really don't. The review boards that the librarians use there's no parent involvement for local Redmond Junior High, Redmond High School parents, and I think that's very important. There's a lot of parents on the Hill and for students in both schools that are very concerned about materials that have been accessed. I do want to thank Matt Montebianco for heading up moving library materials out of the junior high into the high school because they were found to be inappropriate for the 6th graders that would be going in there. So I do appreciate that. But it really annoys me that the policies just seem to contradict each other, that things that are not acceptable in student behavior in the schools, for example, bullying, harassment, swearing, modesty, they're all in policy. You can't do that, but it's all acceptable in materials that are given to our students. So I just wanted to make that note and make you guys aware of that, and hopefully we will be able to implement some type of parental involvement. That's my biggest concern. So, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Angela. And The next person I have is Brian Decker.
Hi. So, live on the hill. I have students go to Redmond Junior High. I wanted to continue the thought on the library materials. We're with children in the junior high, we're focused on that library, and some of the things that were inappropriate for that library aren't appropriate for the high school either, but we'll just focus on the junior high at this point. I want to skip to the... Angela and I went to the library and took just one sample bookshelf, and there were 100 books in that bookshelf, and we pulled off the books just to get a sampling of what was in the library, and 40 of the books were obviously salacious. And I don't want to sound like I'm here to throw books into a big bonfire and advocate censorship. I just would love to have a standard as a parent similar to the standard that you have for textbooks. High quality content, wonderful people that contribute. Right now, as Angela talked about, there really is no oversight or supervision on what goes in the library. When we were shocked at the content of some of what our children were reading, and we took it to Kelly, who is just here, she was shocked as if she had, well, she can't possibly know all the content of all the books. So as a concerned parent, I started to combine forces and talk to other parents, and they were stunned in this latest drug section that they did at the school, how many of the books in our junior high library are filled with things that I respect you as a group enough. I wrote down things to read to you as excerpts. They're stunning. Words that they talk about the main character having young kids masturbate him. Talk about body parts and organs and the F word placed throughout. It's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. I don't consider myself, even though I'm a Christian, I don't consider myself overzealous in the oversight of my children's content at the library. I just think that there's some common sense standards, policies and procedures that right now are not in place that should be in place. So what we would like to do is develop that common sense standards so that we can correct this situation, fix it to a standard of your textbooks and all your other wonderful things that you do at Lake Washington School District. Just raise the standard of what's in those libraries.
Thank you very much. I know Dr. Pierce has a comment because I think there's something on the agenda that's coming up later too that you might want to stay to hear. But
actually, later in the agenda for SUP's report tonight, superintendent's report, we were coming back to provide an update on what does our current policy say for library materials because of the issue that was raised during public comment at the last meeting. So Matt Montebianco is here for that portion of the agenda which comes later. Do we want to move that
we don't have a lot of
forward?
Agenda, really. We don't have a lot of agenda in between here and the superintendent's report, so I think we can probably do it in its assigned time. But I just thought you might like to know that the board is going to be getting an update on what's currently happening. And then I don't know if you have next steps planned or where that will be, but if you can let us know during the report.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and I have one more to speak, and that's Bob Yoder.
Thank you. This is Bob Yoder, and the district I'm in is where Director Bleisner's district, I'm proud to say. good luck. I wish you well, even though you still are called Chip Kimball here. And I'm looking forward to, following you, and I think you're going to do a great job, Dr. Pierce. One thing I wanted to quickly there's a bunch of stuff I wanted to say. I'm not really organized tonight, but I'll run it down later. I wanted to talk about the fact that here I am, a community member in Ceres District. My daughter graduated 2 years ago. She is now a community member, even though she's at Gonzaga, because she votes here. Mm-hmm. And we talk all the time, and she has a lot of insight as to, she talks to Facebook, and they're talking all the time, and there's a lot to be learned from her, and I picked that up from her, and it kind of bridges me in closer to you. So as long as she's voting here, I think she's behind Siri quite a bit. So. But the point of it being is this gets me to this community involvement and decision-making, file number ABA. I sent you a link on that. It's dated 1990, 22 years ago, since it's been either reviewed or revised. And I don't know if this is something you can talk about during your action period or not, or sometime later. But I think we've come a long way from this. And I think that, for instance, in the second paragraph of you're basically, it's talking about parents participating, but yet we have the whole community here. I hope you would include us too, my daughter, me, and the community. We pay the taxes also. We have kids that have gone here. And so if you could amend that, I'd appreciate it. Also, could you involve the citizens in participating not only in just, as it says here, for elementary school principals and vice principals, but also for the superintendent? I felt like left out of the process, and I would like to have participated more than just listening to Dr. Pierce talk after the fact, that, after your decision has been made. So being proactive would be very helpful in that, and also changing this would lead you towards proactivity, which then gets us to the governing style, which is on your consent agenda, your non-consent agenda, GP2. It does say in here to govern proactively rather than reactively, and I think it's been a reactive process, at least from the community standpoint. I do appreciate your efforts, but we're on the receiving end. And can I continue? No. I'll write it up. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bob, the link did not go through. I don't know why. I just could not connect to it. It kept saying I had an error. Did you have it printed, or?
I sent it at 4 o'clock, and I'll send you the link again.
Okay.
I was more concerned about encouraging diversity in viewpoints, which is what you're talking. I hope you'll talk about the governing style. I really do. As far as the link that I sent you, I'll send it again to you.
Okay.
One thing that would be nice is that when you have someone like Forrest, that you're going to have him speak out in the foyer. Mm-hmm. A lot of the community want to know, who are the people that run this district, who manages the bus fleet, who builds these gymnasiums at A.G. Bill, or manages those and directs those. It would be nice to see a face behind the shovel, so to speak, okay, up front here. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
There was just a mistake on that copy he made. Just take the E off.
Oh, is that what it was?
Take the URL he sent, take the E off.
Okay. Okay.
It's an old policy. I don't
Is it?
even know how he found it.
Is it regular policy?
Might be
And,
administrative.
it's administrative.
Might be an
It's administrative policy.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
probably administrative policy now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. What happened to some of those after we did policy governance?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So we can look at that. Yes, certainly.
Actually, one thing to look at, in the currents that went out to the PTA, we actually talked a little bit about the community involvement and where the board is looking at a piece of that. That was my article that just went out. So there's a place that you could look, currents, the PTSA.
But when we talked about that series Did we even look at this very old?
I'm not talking at all about that policy,
No.
but that's some of the community
Yeah.
involvement piece. That has been a very active conversation with the board.
And one that we've been actively discussing and have on Dr. Pierce's radar and agenda items for her to be planning work with us on that. But, okay, I will look at that, just because if it's that old, we might want to look at it. It's administrative, for clarification. When we moved to policy governance, we tried to move most of the things that affected the board and board governance over into our set of policies. And the administrative policies, unless required that the board approved by law, they've worked at trying to update and make them current. There are a lot of them, and so it always helps to have older ones that come up that it's important to relook at them. Are they current? Are they not? Are they pertinent? Are they not? And so that certainly helps us. So thank you for that, and we'll make sure we have that looked at and see what to do with it next. Okay, consent agenda. I'll
Move
entertain.
approval of the consent agenda.
Okay. Second. And a motion second. And Tracy, would you poll the board, please?
Nancy?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Okay, and donations.
Okay.
Let's see, there are 17.
Yes, tab 17. We have donations this evening totaling $49,999.27. So just shy of $50,000. The donations tonight, we have Laura Ingalls, Wilder PTSA to Wilder Elementary for $9,750 to provide teacher enrichment for choir and math Olympiad for winter and spring. We've got a donation from the Eastlake Dance Team Boosters to Eastlake High School for $3,500 to provide coaches stipends for dance and drill. A donation from the Rachel Carson PTSA to Carson Elementary in the amount of $14,989 to purchase mice and headphones for netbooks, to provide classroom science curriculum, to augment science curriculum, to provide stipends for student council, Friday lunch math enrichment, choir music enrichment, spring explorations in math, and a spring after-school fitness enrichment. We've got a donation from Rosa Parks PTSA to Parks Elementary in the amount of $2,970 to provide a stipend for Jump Rope Club and choral music. A donation from Ben Rush PTSA to Rush Elementary in the amount of $1,265 to provide second grade library materials, a multi-touch monitor, and ukuleles. We've got a donation from the Robert Frost PTSA to Frost Elementary in the amount of $1,300 to provide 30 hours of support for before and after school programs. A donation from the Juanita Rebels Booster Club to Juanita High School in the amount of $5,000 to purchase an electronic reader board, or to go toward the purchase of the reader board. Helen Keller PTSA to Keller Elementary in the amount of $5,500 to provide grants for homework club, physical education, counseling, reading specialists, and special education. A donation from the Lakeview PTSA to Lakeview Elementary, $2,700 to support teacher training and field trips. And finally, a donation from the Rose Hill PTSA to Rose Hill Elementary, a $3,000 donation to purchase emergency preparedness equipment and provide teacher stipends for math. So in total, we've got essentially $50,000 of donations to our schools, and we, as always, are very appreciative of the support from our boosters and PTSAs to our schools.
Thank you very much. And again, as I think we say all the time, but without the support and participation with those groups in our schools, they essentially do a lot to help not only the students, but also the teachers and the programs. So that's really very much appreciated. Our next is looking at a first reading for some of our governing policies. We had a work session last month, and those were the comments in compliance was in the consent agenda, but at that time, we discussed the need for a few minor changes in language in some of the policies. So that's what is here before us today. So, and as I said, they're mostly minor language and clarifications, and deciding if I should, well, I'll just go through them because there's so few of them. The first one in GP2 was to look at number 3, was to change the word from the board will direct and control and inspire the district, and remove direct and control and say that the board will govern and inspire the district. And that all of us felt at that time that was a better description of our role in what we do. So I'm just going to ask if anybody has anything else, if they're comfortable with that before moving forward. Did we have any other pieces that anyone wanted to address? I hear none. I'm going to just keep moving. Then under the governance process, under the board job description on number 6, we changed this because we decided that doing a Zoomerang online SurveyMonkey, whatever, of these, by the time we filled them out, got them back, folks were often going, I don't remember what I said. Was that my comment? Because they weren't with names. And so we would often go, oh, I don't remember doing that. So we decided to change how we looked at our own GPs, our governing policies, and our board superintendent relationships. And we did it in a work session where we looked at them one by one and had people look at them ahead of time and bring their comments and thoughts. So this piece here reflects changing that from the survey to an annual work session discussion. GP3, we looked again to do the same thing. It was to change that language. Isn't that the same thing on both sides? Yes. So that was that. GP6 was the planning cycle. It is listed here as beginning at the end of February, where we actually do it at our extended work session, which most often takes place in March, and we decided to put it to the activity whenever it occurred rather than have a specific date that might not be accurate. And then the board member conflict of interest under GP8, a request was for having RCWs added, and so those are there to see where those come from. And in that, Diane and I were having a conversation in that we don't have RCWs attached to any of our other governing policies, and is that something we want to research and do, not instantaneously, because I'm sure it's going to take a little bit of work, because that's Diane that does the hunting and finding these for us to put the references in. But it might not be a bad idea, because we do this certainly for administrative policy, has the RCWs where appropriate put in, that we might want to look at having the GPs done that way, governing policy.
It would be where appropriate.
Yeah, I think where appropriate, because some places may not have anything. But she said that she knows already that there are some in here that she knows exist. So we could do that, and then when we have those, we can bring them forward as a first reading at a later date. And then on GP10 was on number 3, was we decided that the board member should exercise caution. It would be better to say discretion. So again, just a language piece. And those are first readings of our GPs that we had suggested having corrections. And we didn't have any language corrections for the BCRs. So this is here for next meeting. We will be on the consent agenda unless somebody has something else they want to toss out. Okay, hearing nothing. The next item is the calendar for next year, and you have 2 before you. And so we can decide which calendar we would prefer to do. I'm going to do that now. Well, I will tell you in a minute. It's a little later on the agenda. I'm going to just do it now and be done with it, and then we'll move on to the superintendent's report. There are two in front of you. Our traditional meetings are set to be the first and third Mondays. Well, September always throws us for a loop because of when school starts on Labor Day. So it automatically throws us off the cue. So to keep the schedule, it would mean only number 1 would have the one meeting in September, and then from there on go into the pattern. the past several years, we have adjusted our September and October meeting dates off of first and third, allowing us to have 2 meetings each month. And so I asked that we have the option to put before the board. I think this last year we've done a lot of juggling and changing of dates and all because of having the superintendent piece that we were dealing with that was not our normal business. And with school starting, there's often more activities and work session things, and if we're going to be doing linkages, not sure that eliminating one meeting in September would be beneficial. But that wasn't my decision. I just was throwing them out for the options. So it's up to you all to chime in, and do you prefer option 1 or option 2?
I don't really care. I can't plan anything on Mondays anyway, because we never know what's going to happen. I mean, we just kind of agreed that Mondays it was a lot better than when we used to try and meet on Tuesdays to make up Monday holidays.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
So otherwise, I don't really care.
Because that's what we used to do, is meet the Tuesday after Labor Day, which is usually the first day of school, which is really, really hard on staff and really odd on the world.
Every time there was a Monday holiday, we'd meet on a Tuesday, which would just throw everybody's schedule completely off. If you had a Tuesday night class or your kids had something on Tuesdays.
So, but that's the only difference in these two calendars. So, do you have a preference?
I'll just make a pitch for option 1 and see where it happens.
Okay.
I'd pitch for option 2.
So there you have it.
Yeah. And I lean towards 2. I just think at the beginning of the year especially that more consistency and regular two-a-month meetings is better. Because when springtime comes, we end up, because of other spring break and NSBA conferences and stuff, we usually by April are at 1 meeting in February. So,
Especially with the reconfiguration coming down the line.
I'm going for option 2.
And you're going for option 2? Did anybody ask Chris?
No.
Not here.
He didn't email me to tell me he had a preference when he got his documents.
Just knowing there's fairly large issues coming down the pike, it would seem to be reasonable that we should be meeting closer
Yeah,
to the start of
especially with
school.
configuration.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll go for 2 then. Sorry, Doug.
Is that okay, Doug?
Well, I mean, it is what it is.
All right, option 2 will be our calendar then, by consensus.
We've never been offered a choice before.
Well, in the past couple years, I just had us do the calendar as option 2. This year, we thought we
It would be really
throw it out.
nice. I painstakingly go through and do an Outlook invitation to myself so that I have it on my work calendar and my Outlook calendar. Maybe now that Outlook kind of works for everybody, Diane could do that for us.
I don't do Outlook calendars, but you may send it to everyone else. I'm a paper and pencil person
So
still
that I
today.
can have it on
But
all
it's
my
fine.
calendars.
That would be great.
Diane can definitely send that out to everyone and can either decline it or ignore it or
I
accept it.
just delete. Yes, I'm still of the old-fashioned paper and pencil. Okay, superintendent's report. I know we have several items on there this evening, so we'll have Tracy do that.
We do have several items, and in fact, one of the items is around the library material policy issue, and Matt Montebianco, I've asked Matt to come and do the superintendent's report on that topic as a follow-up. Another follow-up item we have is an update on reconfiguration. So that was a request of the board at the last meeting to get an update on staffing particularly and where are we with that aspect of reconfiguration. And Janine Fogart is going to present on that topic. And then finally, you asked for a follow-up on WANIC, or the Washington Network of Innovative Careers, and what programs are available and really what does WANIC look like now? So I will be doing that part. Given that we've got folks here who have particular interest in the one topic, I'm going to ask Matt to come up to the podium and start us off.
And Diane, while he's coming up, would you be sure to send Chris an email to tell him to be sure and look at the video, because he was interested in this reconfiguration part? and just to let him know that it was discussed, and he can just jump to it on the video.
Hey, Matt, you need to submit your name to Google or Word or something.
Buddy.
Just add it to your dictionary.
Yeah, then I have to make sure I've spelled it correct. Yeah, isn't it phonetic?
Good evening. This is a difficult and challenging issue. I've had a couple of conversations now with some of the people who've spoken to you at the dais, and I can say they have a very strong intent, a very good intent, to make sure that their children are in safe schools, that their children are reading and selecting materials from the library that they feel are appropriate. And it's challenging when you're trying to juggle, as I has thought to myself, the needs of everyone in a school library and within our realm of ensuring that what we do is not to censor but to provide a full range of options for people. And I'd like to take us through some of our policy and some of our practices around library based on some of the work I've done, including talking with and listening to some of our community members. Since the last time that we met, I'm just checking on copies, making sure we all have one. Since the last time that we met, where we heard some of the concerns raised, the same concerns that were raised this evening, raised on April 16th, I've had a chance to meet with our library coordinator at the district level who works with librarians. I've also had more than one conversation and meeting with our library leads, who we have designated an elementary lead and a secondary lead, and they provide direction. They're librarians in our school libraries, and they provide direction for our monthly library meetings. And so I've met with them and have discussed this policy, which I'm going to share with you, to actually do what the superintendent, Kimball, at our last meeting asked in front of me, in front of the group here. He turned and he said, I'd like Matt Monobianco to start researching what's our policy and what's our practice, and do they match? Do you remember him saying that? Is what we have in practice really matching what we have in policy? Now, as I embark on that, I'm also wanting to say that I know that the parents who have come to you are very thoroughly versed in the policy, and we've had several conversations about that. So I think the real question for us is, are we seeing alignment in policy and practice? And if not, then are there some connections we need to strengthen? If there's disconnects, are there things that are missing that we add to help strengthen that aren't already in policy? So I also want to mention I visited Redmond Junior Library and the principal together on an afternoon just to spend some time in the site, actually visiting a library and asking some questions about library selections. Not singling that person out in particular, but just wanting to be sure that I had a chance firsthand to not just hear from our library leads, but to actually visit and see what's going on in the library. So I've done that. So the first thing I want to do, it's about middle of the page of the first page, is to point out for you a question which was raised as a compliment, was said, how come our adoption process is so thorough? So many people are involved in a committee. We had 50 people in the math adoption committee. It has to go through committee, it has to go through several lenses, it has to go to IMC, and yet when it comes to library materials, we leave it up to the librarian to decide. And so I wanted to point out to you that there's a huge distinction, and I don't mean to oversimplify this. Our adoption materials are required texts that we require all students to use. So when we're selecting a curriculum, the math one, for example, we don't select that material and leave it up to students, families, and teachers to say, if you don't find these materials objectionable, or rather, if you do, if you find them objectionable, you don't have to use them. A library is different in that we don't require students to read every book that's in the library. Libraries have books that will range the whole continuum of the grades they serve, range the interests, range the reading levels, and a big distinction is they're not required texts. Again, I don't want to sound like that's sort of a no-brainer, But we have a big distinction there, and that's one of the reasons we go through such a very thorough vetting process with adopted textbooks, because they will be used daily in classrooms by teachers and students. So that is the first point I wanted to make, just in reminding us the differences in policy. The second thing I wanted to do was to point out two main policies. One is IIAA, which is the policy pertaining to the textbook selection and adoption policy, and then the IIAAR, which I've attached, the section that pertains to library materials. It's the procedure for the adoption and reconsideration of instructional materials. I want to begin with the first one, and that's the Library Bill of Rights that you see on the bottom of the page. This Library Bill of Rights is currently in policy, so I didn't go out to the ALA and copy it. It is in the ALA's Library Bill of Rights, but it's also in our district policy. And so what I want to point out to you is that the very first opening paragraph says, and I actually want to read it, because not everyone has the benefit of the copies, selection of library materials shall be the province of the school librarian, operating according to professional selection standards and guidelines. And I highlighted for myself, operating according to professional selection standards and guidelines. This evening, one of our speakers, not prompted by me, had actually requested us to use standards when selecting library materials. When I was visiting in the library and when I spoke with our library leads, I quoted this to them and I asked them to show me the standards that they use when selecting library materials. The person at the library, Redmond Junior, came with about 5 different journals, and she set them down on a table and she said, do you want me to go through each of them? And I said, go ahead. I'm curious to know what's in these journals. They happen to be various journals from the School Library Journal, Booklist Review, the Library Media Connection, Horn Book, Kirkus Review. These are just some of the examples of her professional library that she uses when selecting books. I said, take me into one. In fact, would you take me into the one which seems to be stirring up a lot of controversy in your community right now? So she did. This particular one, now these are by librarians, so it's librarians making reviews, make suggestions of what's the appropriate maturity level of the book. And so we'll say grade 9 and above, or we'll say grade 10 and above, or grade 6 through 8. It will give a range. Not every review does that, but they provide, some of the reviews will give you an actual grade range. The book that she happened to be under criticism for actually is listed as 9th and above. And you heard reference tonight. I actually don't deserve the credit. The librarian is the person who said, I am choosing to want to move that book to the high school, and she has started a box of books that she's organizing because she feels they're going to be more appropriate at the high school level. They are provided some guidance, but as I found out in my other interview with the actual library leads, this is guidance and not mandates. So there's no firm, fixed rule that says every book has to follow this recommendation. These are recommended ranges. And so when I asked and sort of pushed back a little bit with our librarian leads and said, so do you honor those or what do you do? And they said pretty much, we honor them, but not every book is rated that way. So you're not going to see that level of specificity with each one. I asked them as well, what else do you use besides these journals? So I asked that of the librarian who I had visited, and I also asked it of our leads, and all of them said, separate occasions, we have each other. We talk to each other as a professional group during our library meetings. We spend some time on book reviews. Again, I want to be honest, and they said to represent them well, we don't go through every book that's in our library and give it a review, but we talk with each other about, are you going to have that book in your library? Is this something you're going to consider, especially if it's controversial? So with controversial books, they actually discuss that during their monthly meetings in terms of getting opinions from each other as colleagues. So that's another piece that goes into play. You'll see on the back page that I've listed some of the practices that the librarians are currently doing that I'm starting to mention as well. I already mentioned the first one is their regular meetings. The second one that I learned, and it's surprised me actually. I was surprised because I was expecting more commonality. But as you go through our policy, it's on the second page it's attached, Librarians are really selecting materials that are specific to their school's population. So using those professional guidelines, they are really thinking and considering, what is it that I would want for my school that may not be exactly the same collection in another school in a neighboring junior high or a neighboring high school. And I say that by way of completely being honest with you, that there is no common list. Like, we don't have a common list of books that are for all the junior highs or a common list for all the elementaries. As it says in policy, which is one of the issues being contested, its final selection is up to the librarian. And the librarian is using those professional selection standards and guidelines to make informed decisions. Again, they do speak to each other and compare notes. That was my third bullet, which I recapped there for you. The more we talked about this issue, it has gotten up some energy of its own, and the librarian said to me that they are actually planning to form a subcommittee to review our district policy with each other, and first as a subgroup, and then they want to do it with all of the librarians, and they're planning to do that in preparation for fall, so for the new school year. I recommended to our new superintendent that we would consider doing this for our principals as well, because another part of our policy is that the check and balance clearly is with the principal. The principal does not have final say with our instructional materials, as you know, you do, as a board, with our textbooks, but the principal is the one who has final determination of what is going to be in the library. I wanted to cite an example, or rather before the example, I wanted to go into some of the specific places where I wanted to call your attention on the attached page. This is from IIAAR. In the introduction on page 9 of 13, it mentions again selection of learning resource materials which are accessible through and reside in the library. I'm the one that's going to put emphasis on this. I said early on that when we do textbook selection, we don't buy math books to be accessible for students. We buy math books with the expectation that they're going to use them. It's a required text for the course. The library books are accessible for any student or patron in the library to check out. They're not required to check them out. And I should do a subnote that if the case is one in which we have students who are being required to check out particular library books, then I'd want to deal with that issue separately from this. So I'm really saying that to the speakers who have not explicitly said that, but if that is an issue, then that's one that we need to be dealing with, since students are not required to check out specific library books. It goes on to recap, all materials shall be, I want to go up above there in that same paragraph, using the professional selection standards and guidelines, and keeping with the primary objective, which is to enrich, to support, and to extend the educational program of the school. Again, I'm putting the emphasis there. It's not to provide the district curriculum, it's to enrich, to support, and extend the program. All materials purchased shall be subject to principal approval, and final responsibilities shall rest with the building principal. There's the check and balance piece, which I'm advising as a next step that we bring before our principals, a reminder that they really do have ultimate say in what they choose to purchase for their schools. This is where I wanted to talk about an anecdotal note. It happened with me about 3 years ago. There was an issue that was brewing in one of our libraries, and it was not this particular library, it was a different one. And the principal called me and said, Matt, I got a problem. I'm reading this book, and I got to say, I've got problems with this text. I personally am having difficulty getting through the first chapter. What should I do? And I pulled up IIAAR, and quite honestly, we went through it together, and I said, let's just be reasonable and talk it through. Have you talked to your librarian yet? Not yet. Came to me from a parent complaint, okay? So you want to talk to the librarian. Start a conversation. What does that say again? All materials shall be subject to principal approval, and final responsibility rests with you. So I was talking with this principal and saying, it's really your call. And it isn't one that has to go through an appeals process. It really resides with you. In this case, they were able to amiably have a conversation, both principal and librarian, and they decided to take the book out of the collection. They felt it erred on the side of, we're not sure how it got here, but we don't think it's the most appropriate book for this level. And that's how it was handled. So we do have policy that allows for that. The second policy piece on that same page 9 of 13, school library media professionals shall cooperate with other individuals, and as the library leads pointed out to me, and that includes themselves. So they cooperate with each other during their monthly meetings in helping to build their collections of resources that are appropriate to the developmental and maturity level of the students who are served. I have provided for you policy practice. When I went to the library visit and when I've spoken to our leads, I would summarize by saying I believe they are using our policy or implementing our policy appropriately. I believe that they are using professional journals and guidelines, as spoken here, that they are using standards and guidelines to drive their decisions. Is it perfect? No, I could never say that we're in a perfect system, but I do believe that they are making appropriate choices based on those standards from the limited interviews and conversations I've had with the library leads and with a visit. So I'm not saying I've been in 50 schools and checked with everyone. I am encouraged that they see a need to get this policy before themselves and they want to review it and discuss it as librarians. I think that's an important step. I also am encouraged that I think we're going to do the same thing with our own principals in ensuring that they are also aware of the policies around library materials. I will open the floor to questions that you might have.
I guess this is more of a comment than a question, but I think and I'm going to have to go crack the history books, but my sense is that this has the potential of opening some old wounds that go back about 60 years when in this state we had a mini McCarthy group called the Canwell Committee that I think, among other things, started looking at what was in our libraries. And there's a whole issue of censorship, and I think the librarians as a profession push back, and a lot of the things like the Bill of Rights and stuff like that are what you see now. But I think some interesting points have been raised, though, in terms of how much, well, I understand the librarians wanting to protect their prerogatives. There's also an interest of balancing, public interest or community parent interest as far as what goes into the collections and that sort of thing. Certainly, I understand what the distinction is in terms of, a library book is not meant to be a book for all students, so it certainly has a distinction when it comes to, comparing that to the need to look at have a very thorough process in terms of vetting curriculum materials. But I think you're absolutely right in looking at how is it that we can get principals to look at their role and to make sure that that's widely known and that other people in the community know that. But I think there is a need to respond to the overall concern about whether there should be a wider community role in reviewing that material. It may be that that the librarians need to do an education component as well to inform the community as to why they have the role that they have, and that there is a tendency, I think, in the Northwest that everybody gets to play. And
that everyone gets to what, Doug?
Everybody gets to participate in everything. And so the question is, but is there an appropriate role for some kind of either building-based review or advisory capacity or something like that? Because I think it's a situation where everybody's gone on for the past 60 years in kind of the same, everybody's gotten kind of complacent about their roles. And it may be time, as you're reviewing the whole matter, to see whether there's also another role for the community, or at least the building-based community.
Couple of questions. One, I'm sure you'll update us when they've done their pieces. I'm assuming should they think that there should be some adjustment or change to policy, that there will be a process for bringing that forward and having that reported to the board. I'm not sure this is one that we would have to vote on, but I think we would like to see any changes that are recommended, both from the librarians and the principal. The other piece is, would you review, it's just begun on there, and I know we have a very formal challenge process, but before we get to there, there are steps in place for concerns that parents have about a text. So would you, and I know they're around both library and sometimes recommended reading in the classroom, which sometimes falls into the same grouping of books as library books, that they're something that the teacher would like the students to read, but it may not be a book either the child or the parent want them to read, and I know we have things in place for that. So could you just kind of touch on that a little bit?
It actually starts on the back of the second page. You have number 10 of 13. The section says challenged materials procedures, and it lists the first two steps that you're alluding to, Jackie, and you're referring to the informal steps that happen, the very first steps. And the first one is that complaints are communicated to the person or persons primarily responsible for the use of the materials. So in this case that I'm aware of, it would start with, it could be the parent saying to the classroom teacher, I don't like the choice of books that you're making available to complete this particular unit or activity. Are there some alternate choices? Is there something else that we could do? And if they don't suggest that, that's what the educator would, or our staff person should come forward and say there are alternates that you could use in lieu of this particular list. So in this case, if there's a series of books on a list, again, not required, but if these are books as part of the assignment you could choose from, and I'm offended by those, then the first step would be, well, let's look at a book that you would not find offensive. So that's the informal. It may be, I'm going to give several examples. It could be, okay, I've done that, and maybe for whatever reason, it didn't go that way. And maybe it went as, those are the choices, it's my assignment. Sometimes, in a short moment, that happens. So then it would be, well, I might have a conversation with the principal. Next is my next step in the case I gave, and would be, I don't understand why these are the books that were required to read from the library. Is there some options, or are there, it's required as part of this project? I understand, the books aren't required in the library, so are there other books I could use to complete the project? So that's still at step one. So both the teacher and the librarian, and sometimes the librarian would get involved. So it could be the teacher, librarian, and principal, or it could be just the teacher level first. So first it's where is the first person who's primarily responsible for the use would be the classroom teacher if they're, in this case, asking kids to do a project with library books. It could be the librarian. So you could be starting right at the librarian step there and seeing if there's a different book that you could use. The other aspect, now I'm giving, that's where it's a classroom project, okay? Could be I come into the library, I find this book, I'm skimming, and I don't like it, and I don't think this should be a book that we have in our library. It would be the same step. Now in that case, I would go to the librarian, and I would say, are you aware of this book? I'm a little offended by it, and I'm more than a little, but I want you to I'm going to call your attention to some things that bother me. So it's on the complainant and the appropriate staff to meet, that's step 2, and try to resolve any misunderstanding. So this is still at an informal stage to actually try to resolve, what seems to be the problem. And is this a book that you think you just don't want your child to read, or is it something else that's bothering you? You want it removed from the library, and then what are your reasons for wanting that? You can imagine then they're not on the sheet. If you turn to page 11 of 13, it starts to sequentially go through a very formal process. So if agreement is not met there at step 2, they weren't able to resolve, then there's a form that we've developed as part of the policy where the parent would go through, or the patron would go through and start to document what it is that they're offended by, specifically what they would want to see happen, and then it goes to the next level, which is to in this case, my attention, which would be the director of curriculum. So those are the informal pieces I think that you wanted me to highlight, which is trying to always resolve it at the building level first. The example that I'm referencing is the one I'm familiar with from the school. Was this all started with a class project, and that the book was on a list of books as part of this project. So that's why I referenced starting with the source of the classroom teacher and seeing if there's some options.
I just wanted, because to me that takes the policy of choice of books also then to the next step of, there's certainly going to be books in libraries, always, that we're going to have community members or students or patrons, parents that are going to have issues with. And I wanted folks to know that there is nothing wrong with bringing that forward to, and those questions forward to be discussed with the building staff, teacher, librarian, principal, and work at possibly having it removed, as you said, from that particular collection. And I realize that often what happens to get to the next formal step is that that resolution doesn't come to be, and the patron still feels very strongly about that, and we do have options for that.
I think it also, Ilana recognized something you said. I want to underscore it. What it allows to have happen is, if I have values, which I've heard tonight and I heard on the last meeting, I have some strong values that I don't believe my child should be reading this book, that we have procedures in place where parents can request other alternatives so that they don't have to have their child subject to that. So it respects and honors the rights and values of the people in our community, all parents in our community. And as you're pointing out, the challenge, what I came to the front here saying, the challenge of trying to make this so that everyone is content with the collection in the library is one I don't know that we would ever meet. But we do need to provide avenues when I feel my values are being offended, and by way of, well, let's choose something else then out of respect for that.
But there's another side to that, and I think we all know that, and that's the issue of age appropriateness. And this is the issue that we have tasked our Instructional Materials Committee with, and our teachers, and really our librarians too. And it's something that is completely ignored by this Librarian Bill of Rights, which is why I've always had a bit of a problem with the way the Bill of Rights has been inserted into our policy. But if you look at our introduction on A, to me the trumping line is keeping with the primary objective, which is to enrich, support, and extend the educational program of the school. Our school libraries do not have the resources to be a public library. They do not even have the need to be a public library. They are not a library to all people. They are a library to support our students and our staff and our educational purpose. They obviously go beyond our curriculum and beyond our required reading, because we want kids to read. We want them to read for fun and enjoyment, and we want our kids to be able to do research. But we also need to set standards.
Right.
And that's why we have some oversight. I guess my question in this case would be, I mean, to my knowledge, this is 21 years since one of these issues have come to the board, since I was so directly involved with the last one.
As was I.
I was on the challenge committee.
Oh, you were? I wasn't. I was kind of peripherally involved, let's put it that way. I was at the school, and I supported the challenge, but was not directly involved with the challenge. But it was an eye-opener and a real learning experience, because I then came to realize that not everybody values protecting little children in the same way that I would see it. Sorry, I'm having throat problems. So the question in this case is, we apparently, in this case, had parents come forward with books they considered extremely inappropriate, and we're talking extremely inappropriate from what I'm gathering. Are we in the process of the principal making a decision, a conversation going on with the librarian, or did it just pop to the board level? What's going on in terms of the other steps available? Granted that there's always the option,
Right.
and I know that this was exercised for my children because, well, for my daughter, because she despite now she works on international justice, ethics, and genocide, she used to be really squeamish.
Right.
And so sometimes her teachers made alternative reading assignments for her, especially after she threw up in one class. So we have that option, but that's a different type of option than what we're talking about here.
So I want to recap. I mentioned, Nancy, that in this case, the librarian has made a choice to start packing up the books that she feels are appropriate for ninth grade and is having those boxed and moved over to the high school.
But I didn't think we were dealing with ninth grade book here. I thought we were dealing with younger kids.
No, we're dealing with 7th through ninth grade with a book that's in the library, age range appropriate more for ninth grade.
And if I remember right from your conversation, sometimes there are books that have an age appropriateness and other ones don't have that available. So it really is the librarians who are doing a lot of that around. And to define age appropriateness is it's a judgment call. What I would believe is age appropriate is probably different than what Jackie would believe. Or you would
there's
believe.
no question that what I believe is age appropriate isn't what the library, when I look at books that I've read as an adult and then I look at them labeled as youth or juvenile and I'm going, what? So, granted. But is that what we're talking about, books that we're just moving to the high school level here?
We're talking about what started this, is my understanding is that these were books that were on a project list that was in a 7th grade class, and they happened to be using books that are at the upper end of maturity level, and the librarian is choosing to move those on her own to the high school because she feels that's where they'll be more appropriate.
And will the high school recipient review if they keep them or not?
That's my understanding is what the practice
just because
would be.
the box of books comes doesn't necessarily mean the high school.
I have to accept donations.
But I want to
through.
say, though, for the sake of being honest, so that it doesn't come back to another meeting, that is not a practice that I could say is happening in all of our junior highs.
Right.
And I confirmed that with our library lead people today. So it's really a decision that librarians are making based on their read of their community and their school culture to say, I think this is going to be more appropriate for the high school.
Well, I would think that we would need to have our schools be looking at that, because I know that is an old issue. That line, when they grade or rate these books, whoever decides on the youth, the juvenile, the whatever, it's always been a controversial issue for where we have our grade levels. So if it's something that's clearly, these people that make these decisions have said ninth grade and above, they probably should be going up to the high school.
And I realize that's a big task to ask because libraries are not small with books, but I really think with the change, I would hope that our librarians would be looking through their collection, and they certainly must know some off at the top of their head that are age appropriate for older, that they would begin that move on their own and start to do that. I know I volunteered for a number of years in an elementary library in the district, many years. And so knowing librarian there, several of them, weeding through and going through collections, they're pretty knowledgeable of their collections and what they have on the shelves. So I would think that some titles would certainly come to the top of their head pretty quickly about what might need to move, but it would be a process for gathering other books.
Here were two different points of view. When I had a current librarian at the elementary, current librarian at junior high. The elementary librarian said, when the Quest program left our school, I had all those high-end 6th grade targeted books, which were really even higher than 6th, moved to the junior high. And it wasn't because they were inappropriate or that they had offensive content. It was that the age appropriate meant more in a middle school setting. I had the junior high level lead say to me, now wait a minute, school by school, there may be some books because of the content and readability of the student that I might choose to keep a book in the library, even if that Kirkus review said 9th grade and above, because I have kids who actually are going to ask for that text.
Well, finding challenging text for high-end, for advanced readers is an issue.
Right.
But we're talking apples and oranges, and admittedly hard to sometimes sort out because, well, you were an English teacher. and I feel really bad sometimes for these kids that are second grade that are reading at such a high level, and there's so little that's age appropriate for them.
Content.
And yet they're reading so far ahead, so.
And that's what I'm
Yeah,
referencing.
that's not clear-cut lines.
That's what I'm referring to, Nancy. It's the age-appropriate, reading far ahead. I want to keep this book because it's going to be challenging for those students, or rather providing a challenge for those students. Apples and oranges. We're not talking about a librarian defending keeping an inappropriate text. It's about age-appropriate vocabulary development, maturity.
I think one of you started this with the policy and practice, and are they matching? So I guess I'm going to ask your expert opinions. What do you believe, now that we know what the policy is and you've kind of looked at practice, where are you with feeling those are?
I think that our new superintendent wants to jump in here. So
I will go ahead and
Tracy
speak
do
to that.
She's been trying to.
So I want to start by just acknowledging that we've had parents here tonight speaking on this issue of students accessing inappropriate material, concern whether it's library text, print material or material on the internet. And we do have policy in place that's designed to protect students from accessing inappropriate material. We've got web filtering processes in place that look at students' age and maturity level differently, so it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, K-12, and that's philosophically where we are with our library textbook material as well. There are a couple of policy issues that I think in Matt's really investigation of, what of the policy and practice that emerge as salient points from my perspective. In the introduction piece that you alluded to, Matt, the one piece that you didn't highlight is at the end of that introduction paragraph. It says the philosophy of selection is stated in IIAA and shall be reviewed periodically with the librarians and principals. And I think oftentimes when there are issues or concerns that emerge, that's our opportunity to review these periodically. And in Matt's conversations with the librarians and with the principals, I think it's clear that we need to review our philosophy of selection to make sure that people know where their lines of authority are and what actually these processes should be. Next year, we will have one of our directors of school support who will be working with our school librarians. Similar to the model, we have a director of school support who works with the counselors, and that will be our model moving forward. So again, it's I think a nice opportunity to review philosophy of selection. And we've got the shift in configuration. Now, our first priority in movement of library materials has been, if we obviously have materials that were purchased in the library to support 9th grade curriculum or to support 6th grade curriculum, those are the priority materials that need to be moved in the shift. And what we haven't done is thought about this also as an opportunity to review philosophy of selection, and is there anything in the selection that would need to be moved for non-curricular reasons. For example, the librarian that Matt is speaking to has kind of taken that next step to say if there's specific materials that are really for grade 9 in terms of developmental and maturity level, then I'm also going to box up and move those books. But we as a system have focused on what books need to be moved to support curricular areas. The objectives of selection, I think there are 3 things that we try to balance here, and I'm reading from page 9 of 13, the document that Matt gave us. The materials, when we're looking at selection, we're looking at intellectual freedom within the school by providing resources and services that create and sustain an atmosphere of free inquiry That's one. Number two, that the library media professionals shall cooperate with other individuals. We don't specify who those other individuals are. In building collections of resources appropriate to the developmental and maturity level of students. I believe that, as we've pointed out, the definition of what's developmentally appropriate or what's the appropriate maturity level can vary. So that's why there's cooperation with individuals needed to make those determinations. And then thirdly, that we want to ensure that students have access to resources and services free of constraints resulting from personal, partisan, or doctrinal disapproval. So it's those three objectives in selection that we try to balance. And I think it is a good time for us to review our philosophy of selection with our librarians and principals and have a conversation about what do these things really mean and who are these individuals that are cooperating with us in building our collections. So I think that we have solid policy and a need to revisit what does the policy actually mean and what practices do we have in place that align to our policy. That's separate from the individual book concern that you're alluding to. There's sort of two prongs to this. It's the overall policy and practice question, and then the individual book issue.
And as you do that, I would think it's important to maintain that distinction between curricular material and individual books, that a child has the right to choose or not to choose, or a parent has the right to say yes or no to as that selection process, because that freedom of inquiry is important.
I agree it's important, but I also think that there are some things in terms of age appropriateness and standards, as was pointed out in terms of our own policies, that we also have to adhere to. There is a lot of literature written at and aimed at children that I think we could have a community consensus that would not be considered appropriate, but for most people.
I'm not convinced that's true, however.
I think it's very difficult sometimes to define. Well, I think when it comes, I think that you could, we do it when it comes to some of our other areas. We could have it probably better in our library materials. I don't know that it becomes an issue very often. I am intrigued that it seems to have become an issue now after all these years of laying quiet for so long. Well, I think it's usually, handled by what the librarians choose to put in the libraries.
But I think I agree with Siri. I think, Bree, again, when you look at a community the size of ours, and even if you take one school, we would have a very diverse opinion about some of the appropriateness of age and what you have. So, they wrestle, I know librarians wrestle with that as well. But I think what I'm hearing is that there's a process now that will be a review, and with the librarians and principals and with Matt and with Tracy. And come fall, we will come back with our overall arching pieces. The individual pieces are in place. We have policy, and those avenues as individuals, if they have issues, are there for them to follow should they feel that that's what they need to do. If they aren't satisfied at the building level, there is process. And as I said, and Nancy said, having sat many years ago on the challenge side of on the committee side, it's a pretty intense and very well thought out set of procedures for folks to go through to do the challenge and to be heard and decisions to be made.
I'd like to add another piece that I heard earlier as we're summing up. Not sure what's happening there. And it's something that Tracy alluded to in her opening statement, and it's what we heard from the speakers on 2 occasions now. Talking with principals gives us an opportunity for them to realize the lens they carry, a pretty big burden, is to also be the eyes of the parents of your community, the families that are in your community, and to really look at these books that your librarians are ordering through that lens. Is this a selection that your community would support? I think the people we've heard from have said pretty clear they want more parent involvement, and I think right now what our policy doesn't speak to is carrying that parent lens as a principal, which is something we can certainly emphasize with our principals, to say you really are carrying the eyes of your community. Would someone from your community object to this material being ordered and brought into your school? And that's a piece I think that I've heard tonight that we are wanting to address as well.
Okay, so we have procedures and activity that will be taking place. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
For your doing all that for us. Okay, next topic.
Okay, our next topic is the reconfiguration update, and Janine Fogart, our Deputy Superintendent of Operational Services, is going to take the lead on this part.
And for our viewing public, while Janine's getting that up, Janine Fogart is our Deputy Superintendent. Which title do I have for this current?
Operational Services.
And will that title stay the same?
Yes, that is the title.
For next year? Okay, great, yes.
All right. All right. Tonight I'm going to give you a bit of an update on the reconfiguration, some of the staffing and logistical pieces of the reconfiguration work that's been going on. I know you've heard a lot about a lot of the academic side of the programs that are being planned at middle schools and a lot of that work, communications that have been going on at the schools. But I'm going to highlight some of the things that have been going on to help prepare all of the sort of support systems and infrastructure for reconfiguration. So there are two kind of main documents that I just am going to highlight. Obviously, you can't read these details, but there's two documents that kind of lay out the big chunks of work that we need to do around reconfiguration. This is the one we refer to as the race car because it kind of is on the ground pieces that a lot of this work is very affects schools directly. So much of this work was work that was being done at the schools or directly involving schools. There's another document that we have, which is more of the logistical side, which we call the truck, going with our theme of airplanes, cars, and trucks. And this document was developed by the operations and technology teams to really get down to the logistical level of all of the detailed things that need to happen to make sure that come September 5th next year, September 4th, we're ready to go with reconfiguration. So there's about 5 pages of this document that look just like this with a lot of details and responsibilities for work that's happening all throughout this year, and a lot of it going on this summer, of course, because a lot of this has to happen after school is done to get ready for next year. So those are just kind of the big, I'm going to highlight just a few particular areas. Obviously, the staffing process is a huge impact as we look at reconfiguration. The configuration change results in the movement of about 75 less elementary teachers because of losing a grade level, and of course about 75 more at high school. So as we started down this process, initially we talked about how do we facilitate that change in a way that we can help staff be in places where they want to be and also realign our staff assignments with our needs for next year with reconfiguration. We entered into a process to develop a joint agreement with LWEA. So the district and LWEA came up with a process that we agreed to
last fall, and we called it the priority transfer process. And the really intent there, and I'll talk a little bit more specifically about some of the details, but it was really to look at having teachers who are highly qualified, who wanted to move to a different level, to be able to support that need and staffing change, to let us know what subject area they were interested in, and then also have an opportunity to express school interest. Some of the goals we outlined with LWA jointly were to making sure that staff members were in a place where they desired to be and where they were qualified to be. That was in both of our interests. There was an interest to have a dialogue with the new staff member or the potential new staff member transferring with principals. That's a process that happens with our regular transfer process. Each year we go through a process of offering staff the opportunity to transfer between buildings, and that process does occur, and that was a real interest. So principals had the opportunity to meet them, to talk about building expectations, kind of some of the team issues that are going on with maybe a particular content area, those kinds of things. So we wanted, of course, to let people know as far in advance as possible what their assignments will be. That's really in everyone's interest. We know that there's additional staff work required, and similar to our transfer process, there is some compensation for staff that transfer to help with that work. We want to minimize disruption, and then, of course, maintaining building seniority was an interest. So just kind of a general timeline. This last October, we had teachers that were interested in changing levels fill out an online survey request indicating the level, the subject area they were interested in teaching, as well as the buildings they were interested in going to. Our Human Resources Department then had to take all of those requests and look at them to make sure that staff were highly qualified. With all the new federal regulations, it's a pretty complex process to determine whether they've passed their appropriate WESD test that has to be given, or just what kind of actual college work they've done, coursework, those kinds of things. So they went through and did all of that. And then if there were staff members who expressed an interest, say maybe going from elementary to math at middle school, but they didn't hold all of the proper things to be highly qualified, then they let them know that. So if they wanted to, they could work towards getting those. We also then in November had our high schools started to determine the staffing they need, and I'll talk a little bit about how the dominoes worked in this process. But we needed to determine the number of new staff that would be needed at the high schools, because that's really kind of the first step in making this process work. They did that, and then the priority transfer process actually started in December. We focused on core subject areas first because that was the area where there was the most ability for schools to predict their need. They know about how many students they're getting, they know how many sections of English that's going to be, how many sections of science, those kinds of things. It's a little more difficult with the non-core, the electives, because usually students register first before they determine that need. So that lagged a little bit behind. We have now done the staffing allocations based on those registrations, so now they have just recently given the more non-core content elective staffing, and still going through that process to make those moves. So as I said, the first step was really to define the need at high schools. That was sort of the trigger point. We did an early staffing allocation. Normally we do that in the spring of the following year, but we did it last fall, and then high school principals determined kind of that initial core content staffing. Then transfers were made off of the priority transfer list, and what that resulted in, then of course, where middle school teachers moving to high schools resulted in openings at middle school, which then we were able to fill with elementary staff interested in moving to middle school. So it really was kind of a domino that happened. We didn't really have to force anyone to move. We were able to do it by identifying the area of need, filling those, which then created other needs that then we were able to fill.
Once a position was identified, it was offered to the most senior staff member who requested that school, who was highly qualified. As I mentioned, there was a staff member principal meeting that was held, and then if the staff member had the opportunity to either accept the transfer or they could decline it, and if they did decline it, make more than 2 declines, then they were removed from the priority transfer list. And that was part of the agreement that we did with the association when we developed the process. So what really happened? 142 staff members requested to be put on the priority transfer list. To date, 70 staff members have been moved between levels, 38 moving from elementary to middle, and 32 from junior high to high school. There's 37 remaining on the transfer list, and that difference, 35, mostly declined. There are a few who just asked to be removed, changed their mind essentially, but the majority of those probably declined the transfer. So, sort of next, yes, go ahead.
So does that mean that they hold their current position, or what happens to them?
Yes, that means that they hold their current position. Okay. So if they did not move, then they stay in the position that they're in.
Okay.
And I will mention that this process was open for staff members who have continuing contracts. So we do have some staff members who are on like a one-year leave replacement, and that because they don't have a continuing contract, they were not availed this opportunity. But all of our continuing contract employees now have either been moved through this process or are remaining in their current building. Sort of the next steps are, at this time of the year, there's a lot of movement that has to be factored in this overall sort of addressing where we are. I should add a caveat to what I just answered to Doug, because my second bullet here, but let me get to that. So the people who we're factoring in, of course, leaves and resignations. What we do have is about 11 elementary buildings who are currently overstaffed. What we didn't do in this process was we didn't say how many staff members does each elementary need to move, and then sort of make them move. We allowed the system to, those people who wanted to move, knowing that at the end of the day, we are going to have some buildings who maybe more people left in elementary school than needed to, where another one not enough did. So that's the piece where we're at right now. Everybody that has a continuing contract still has a contract for next year, but we do have some elementary schools right now who have more staff assigned than they will need next year. There's a couple of things, and that happens really every year, potentially. This is just more than normal because, of course, this big change. We know a couple things are going on. Of course, we have leaves and resignations going on that will change that. We are in the process of updating enrollment projections, so if more students register, then that changes the staffing level. But we do have a process within the contract to deal with how to deal with buildings who are overstaffed. And essentially what we do is go through a process, ask for volunteers. If there aren't volunteers, then the least senior staff member would be moved and assigned to another building that has a position for them. So, in addition, we are running parallel the regular transfer process. So the normal transfer process that happens each year allows staff to move between buildings, so that's going on kind of in parallel. Most all of the priority transfer process now has been completed, and we're into the regular transfer process. And then, of course, we have some open positions that we need to be hiring for, and I just thought you might find it interesting. Here's kind of the major areas that Human Resources indicates that we're recruiting for. Some of these are reconfiguration related, and some of them are kind of the normal special ed, of course, always a normal. Counselors at the high school area is an area because of reconfiguration. We are adding counseling positions, so that is one that's related to that. Math, and then dual endorsed LASS at both middle and high school, I think, is a reconfiguration related, because looking at the blocking, many of the schools are doing, there's an interest in having staff that can teach both LA and SS.
And how has this impacted the capacity of our HR office to process all this? Are we surviving?
they're hanging in there. It's been a tough year. It's been a lot of work, and we've had a little bit of extra help in helping them get some of the stuff prepped and researching files. A lot of this work, of course, has to be done on an individual basis when you're looking at if they're highly qualified or not. Yeah, it's been a challenging year, but they've been doing a great job, and really things have gone very smoothly. Not very many hiccups. The transfers went exceptionally well, I think, and just things sort of all of a sudden it seemed to be done, and it went much more smoothly than I thought it would. So that's been good. One of the other areas that we worked on this year was the administrative and classified staffing model. In addition to adjusting staffing for teaching, as reconfiguration came up, we knew that administrative and classified staffing models were an area that we needed to look at. We convened a committee. We had a 13-member committee that made recommendations, and it included both principals, central office, our business office. Tracy and myself participated in that. They met 10 times, and they met for a long time. Many of those were day-long and half-day meetings, so it was an extensive process. We used an interest-based process, and we took an opportunity, really, we could have just looked at high schools, knowing that high schools were the ones getting additional students, so what changes did we need to make there? But we really stepped back and took this as an opportunity to review the whole model for methodology of how we allocate administrative and classified staffing. There are a lot of, either just because the way we've always done it, allocations in those areas, or my favorites are the ones where it takes Barbara Posthumous's brain to know, remember that in 1993 we cut the budget and we subtracted this and we added this, and I like to say divided by pi. So sometimes there's these kind of historical legacy allocations that we really stepped back and said this is an opportunity to relook at the allocations we have, the methodology, what makes sense, how can we do this consistently so it's easy to understand and it's fair and equitable, and we have principals participate in the process. So I think it's been a really good process. And I'm not going to go into all the details of this, but just kind of big conceptually is that really it establishes a baseline staffing for each level, for each area. So for administrative, for instructional assistant staffing, for secretarial staffing, recognizing that regardless of the size of buildings, there is a certain level of staffing that's needed. So not all staffing allocations are, size does not necessarily the only factor that should be used, or if we use a purely size-based, you get to that point where there just needs to be a baseline staffing to make the school function. So we established a baseline staffing level, and then we determined for each of the components what would be the allocations that would differentiate beyond the baseline. That includes size, that includes for administrators some other factors that we determined were impactful, number of programs in the building, special ed, those kinds of things. So went through a process of identifying those and developing a model based on those. Kind of the big results are, I think as you know, the elementary assistant principal, a new position that serves really our largest elementary schools. That position is split between a number of schools. Englewood Middle School assistant principal, which we already have, but the model reinforced the need to continue that. And then 2 new positions for associate principal at high school, Redmond High School and Eastlake High School, our 2 largest high schools under the new reconfiguration. And then classified recommendations, just about finished. We're actually sharing those next week, but kind of a similar baseline plus additional staffing. Yes, Nancy.
So I'm confused. Currently, our junior highs have a principal and assistant principal. Are the middle schools going to keep a principal and assistant principal?
Yes, that is the baseline. So the baseline is 1 elementary principal, 2 a principal and assistant principal at middle school, and then 3 is the baseline at high school.
So in addition to that, our largest elementary schools are going to share assistant principals?
Right.
And Englewood would have an additional, so they'll have 2 assistant principals?
Correct, which they currently do.
And Redmond and Eastlake will get a third?
3 assistants and 1, yes.
Okay, this is not clear to me on the slide, but now I understand, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And then just some of the other things that we've been working on, and most of these are off of the truck document that you saw earlier, but a lot of the things that are been working on by the operations team, as we looked at the impact of additional 9th grade students and a variety of work that needs to be done to facilitate reconfiguration. These are just a highlight of some of the things that we've been working on. Emergency preparedness, obviously we have a number of all of our high schools receiving additional students. We knew that we needed to focus on the emergency preparedness supplies, the basic kind of services that we provide. So our risk manager has worked with high schools, they've developed their needs, and we're actually in purchasing right now to be able to acquire those things. So when kids start in the fall, they will have basic emergency supplies. So food services is impacted, of course, by reconfiguration with the numbers of lunches that happen at high schools particularly. So they are working with schools on that. We've got some of the modernizations, of course, that impact food services, staffing levels. So that's an area that they have been working diligently to make sure they're prepared for reconfiguration. The moves of textbooks, supplies, and materials is a huge undertaking. Matt, we alluded, I think, earlier to the moves of curriculum, the library books as it relates to the curriculum. We have the actual textbooks that need to be moved. Matt has been working diligently with George Walker and the Warehouse and Barbara Posthumous to give directions to schools, and we've got details of how to pack boxes and where to put them, and George Walker in the Warehouse has got his whole summer planned out to be able to incorporate this work into all the other work that they get done during the summer. So we will be moving a lot of materials. Technology, of course, is another area that there'll be computer moves that have to be done, so that work is underway and being planned. Transportation has looked at all of the configuration changes, what will routing need to be in order to have additional 9th graders riding, less elementary students riding, so all of those things impact that. They have got a good plan put together. In terms of the website, there are just a whole host of minutia of details, as you can imagine. The websites now say junior high schools, we'll have middle schools, things like where staff are, all of those changes. There's just a myriad of details that people are attending to. And then in technology and the data centers, same thing. The distribution list, of course, all have to be updated. Many of the software programs assign staff to where they are, name changes in terms of schools, all of those kinds of things. So they're all attending to a whole host of those kinds of details that they're working on to make sure that we're prepared come fall.
Good thing you called it a truck. More than one. Boy, talk about logistics. Whew. And it sounds like it's just moving along. Just got it all in a row.
Well, that
Thank
was
you
gonna,
for the
that was going to
update.
just be a question, was have there been any bumps along the road? Has it, I mean, as you look down the pathway, how's it looking for September? She laughs.
$5 million question.
I think it's looking really well. I think that from the side of the logistics folks, I think their biggest worry, of course, is school's out June 26th, and school starts September 4th, and teachers come back August 24th or something like that. So there's a few short 6 weeks or something in there to get a lot of work done.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's right now the biggest worry on people's. I think people know what the work is, and I'm sure there'll be things that get forgotten, but I think we've worked really hard to think through all those things and make sure we're clear about who's worrying about what. But I think the biggest worry right now is just the the short time frame to get, a lot of this work really just has to be done after school's out. So that's, I think.
As I said, lots of trucks, because there's a
Yeah,
lot of what
literally
you're talking
trucks.
about is physical stuff that's got to move from one building to another, and we have 40-some buildings, so they'll be busy. Does George get a vacation? Probably not this year. Not this year. Okay. Any other questions for Janine before she leaves the podium? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Janine. I just also want to take a minute, in the reconfiguration work, the spotlight, rightly so, has been much on the academic and instructional program changes. But there's a whole host, as Janine highlighted for us, of operational issues that come along with the shift. And we've had people working incredibly hard. Janine, the HR department, all of the people in all of the departments that Janine mentioned, and across divisions as well, because, for example, Matt helping to think through the curriculum materials that need to shift. And so I just want to acknowledge all the hard work that's been happening in that part of the organization as well, and really all throughout the organization to help ensure that the shift is successful. And we want to be able to guarantee that it's going to go off without a hitch. We want to be able to guarantee that. We're not quite ready to absolutely guarantee that. We would rather underpromise and overdeliver, but we think, thought of everything. So, it's great. The last item on superintendent's report really is shifting back to the academic and instructional program and kind of making a connection there. As we make this shift to four-year high schools, we've been working quite a bit with our high schools on what changes do we need to focus on now that we'll have ninth graders at the high school. And at the last board meeting, you had asked for an update on WANIC and kind of what programs are offered there. And so I'm going to get to that, but I want to take just a moment to share with you, I'm going to read an excerpt from a publication called Pathways to Prosperity Project, and it's from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. It was published in February of 2011, and it speaks to this issue of having pathways for students. And so this excerpt is multiple pathways, a broader vision for school reform. And so I'm just going to read a few parts from this document to help sort of set the frame for the WANIC update. It says, our current system places far too much emphasis on a single pathway to success, attending and graduating from a four-year college after completing an academic program of study in high school. Yet, as we've seen, only 30% of young adults successfully complete this preferred pathway, despite decades of efforts to raise the numbers. And too many of them graduate from college without a clear conception of the career they want to pursue, let alone a pathway for getting there. It is long past time that we broaden the range of high-quality pathways that we offer to our young people, beginning in high school. The lessons from other countries strongly suggest that this might be the single most promising strategy for greatly increasing the percentage of young adults who earn a post-secondary degree or credential that prepares them to embark on a meaningful career. Every high school graduate should find viable ways of pursuing both a career and a meaningful post-secondary degree or credential. For too many of our youth, we've treated preparing for college versus preparing for career as mutually exclusive options. At the same time, aspiring doctors, lawyers, or architects understand very well that college is, in fact, education for a career. They know the courses they need to qualify for advanced professional training because the pathways to an occupational credential are clearly marked. In our view, the U.S. system would be greatly strengthened if the pathways to all major occupations were clearly delineated from the beginning of high school so that young people and their families could clearly see the patterns of course taking and other experiences that would best position them to gain access to that field. In such a system, students would still retain freedom to change their minds and embark on different courses. They would not be locked into one career at an early age. We are convinced that this pathways approach would significantly expand the numbers of young adults who earn a post-secondary credential in a timely fashion. In the process, it would expand both their earning potential and employment opportunities. Students need to know that there are navigable pathways leading to rewarding careers in the mainstream economy. It goes on to say that cutting-edge career and technical education, or CTE, bears little relationship to the old vocational education programs that were often little more than dumping grounds for students who couldn't cut it in college prep. Today's best CTE programs do a better job of preparing many students for college and career than traditional academics-only programs. There's a growing movement to create high-quality 21st century CTE programs. This whole idea of pathways and multiple pathways and a focus on college and career readiness is really what we're all about in our mission and vision and in the work that we've been starting to do with our high schools. And WANIC fits right into that work in that WANIC is the Washington Network for Innovative Careers. It's a consortium of 7 school districts that partners and shares career and tech ed programs. So these 21st century kinds of CTE program offerings for students. The member districts include Bellevue, Issaquah, Lake Washington, Mercer Island, North Shore, Riverview, and Snoqualmie Valley. And we are a state-approved inter-district CTE consortium. Now, we've got CTE courses that students take in our high schools, and we also have CTE courses available to our students through the WANIC consortium. So all of our CTE courses don't reside within WANIC, but we have many that do. And the courses are available to students in the areas of arts, media, communication, and design. That's a pathway. Business management is a pathway. Natural resources and agri-science as a pathway. Engineering, science, and technology as a pathway. Health and human services, and information technology. So you can see that those pathways are not, it's not college or, they're, like the excerpt said, they're not mutually exclusive, but it's helping students to see the connection between the course taking that they take in high school and how that can lead to a post-secondary educational experience that may or may not be a 4-year high school, but also to a career. I'll share with you in a moment some of the course offerings that are offered through WANIC, but I thought it was interesting. I pulled up the 2012 Best Jobs list from U.S. News and World Report. Interestingly, connecting back to our recognition for this evening, registered nurse is number 1, and elementary school teacher is number 12. But as I look at the WANIC course offerings and their pathway areas, for example, business management, they offer a course in event planning, hospitality, and tourism, which is number 16 on the list for Best New Jobs for 2012. They've got a new medical careers course under their health and human services pathway. Again, that's number 1, essentially, and there's a couple of different medical careers that are on this list of best jobs. They also have under engineering, science, and technology, carpentry and construction tech. That's number 11 on the best new jobs. So it's trying to help students see those connections. Under information technology, number 6 on the best new jobs list is it has to do with web design, and WANIC offers a course in computer science and Java program. So there are a number of course offerings available for our students through WANIC, and they're mainly offered to our 11th and 12th graders. Students learn about the programs through their counseling and their career specialist at their school. They've got courses that are available to students during the summer. For example, there's a number of courses available to students at DigiPen, which is part of the WANIC offerings. There's a firefighting summer course, health careers camp, a home improvement basic construction course, so a wide range of offerings that appeal to students. And again, the students who can participate are the students who live within the 7 member districts. There are some exceptions to students enrolling before 11th or 12th grade, but it's mainly for 11th and 12th grade. The courses are year-long in general, and students, in terms of earning credit for high school graduation, they're earning OC Ed credit because the courses are CTE funded, and some equivalency credit is also offered depending on the course. So they could also potentially earn their science credit or their math credit through taking a WANIC course. In addition to earning high school credit, there's also many of the courses that are available for students to earn college credit through Tech Prep. WANIC is not a place, although the WANIC offices reside on the campus of the Lake
Technical
Washington
College.
Yeah, Institute of Technology. They used to be called the
Lake-
Technical College.
Lake Washington
Institute of Technology.
Institute of Technology, that's the new name?
That's the new name.
Someday I'll get that straight. My
I'm
son
training
goes
myself
there.
to say it too. But,
Washington Institute of
but we offer, at our schools, we can offer WANIC courses. So our high school principals are working in collaboration with our CTE director and the director of WANIC to strengthen and develop more offerings in pathways that students can access in our schools. Now, if we offer the course, for example, at Redmond High School, it's also got to be open to other students within the WANIC consortium. So that's a little bit more about how WANIC works, some of the course offerings that are available, and how it's connecting to where we're headed with pathways and options for students in our high schools.
I went back to the old name because the website's out of date. It still says LWTC.
Well, they just haven't updated.
You're right.
Yeah.
They need to update that on their website.
Because they've just changed their
So
name in the last
how
few months.
Are you going to explain the difference between this one and NEVAC and the Skills Center we were just involved with developing? Because I'm starting to get confused.
So you
Not that I don't love all three of them, but
Wasn't NEVAC on?
You can think of WANIC as the new and improved NEVAC.
this has replaced NEVAC.
Yes.
But it's only 7 districts. We lost some districts. We used to have 11 or something in NEVAC at one time, I thought.
I don't know.
Originally. People are shaking their head.
Well,
Boy,
it's
that
still
was the
based
number
on
in my head.
logistics. I don't think we had much more than that.
Well, the problem was transportation, but I thought it was like 11 at one time.
Has there been any look at the scheduling issues around WANIC and just they're sort of timing things and sometimes at looking at the flexibility of how you can access those classes as you go on? Because of our 6-period day that we have, oftentimes these courses aren't accessible because they might be only 3 days a week. So I don't know if there's discussion on how you work that flexibility of these types of programs with scheduling that we currently have, and if there's been some discussion around.
It's definitely an issue that has emerged, and discussion has begun around how to, if these programs are available to students, what are the barriers to them accessing these programs. We don't yet have a solution, and one of the interesting things is because of the way that WANIC functions now, it's not really a place. So in a skill center model, there's a building, a facility, and all students would be transported or transport themselves from their high school to the skill center to take their course. Now they could potentially be going to a school in Bellevue or a school across
It's like
the district.
NEVAC was.
It's,
So this has always been a problem.
And so it continues to be a challenge that we have not yet figured out because there's 7 districts and different high school schedules and
We've got 7 periods.
Well,
challenge.
they've got environmental science, AP environmental science listed as one of the offerings.
It is.
So that to me that's even more overlap if you start to list some of our class offerings as also being part of this program. I don't know, other districts may offer AP environmental science also.
Yeah.
And they may not.
I think
Some of the smaller ones.
that was a CTE offered course because of who was teaching it.
The CTE course, but we have other CTE courses that are not part of WANIC.
That's correct. So we have CTE courses that are only available to our own students in the high school. Then we have WANIC courses that are CTE and potentially, for example, it's a 3-hour period of time that can actually, based on the way the funding works, extend the school day for students. So that's one of the scheduling issues for us to look at is based on the way the additional funding that comes with WANIC, we could have that course extending the school day for students. So they could take their 6 periods and, have the last period be the first part of their WANIC block of time. So they're actually, or the whole entire 3 hours occurring outside of the regular school day. So there's a lot of flexibility for us to look at, but WANIC doesn't replace our CTE offerings in our own schools.
Well, and that environmental AP class is not necessarily ours either. I was just looking at their list of class offerings, not where they're offered. So how does this work with the skills center the Health Sciences Skills Center we were just involved with developing?
So, for example, we haven't, let me explain it this way. So at the Lake Washington Institute of Technology, there's an allied health building, and some of these courses are available to students at the allied health building there. That facility really resides within our area. The Snoqualmie Valley District also wants to build a facility that could serve students, and they would host WANIC programs in that facility.
Duval, I think.
Well, we didn't actually build an Allied Health Sciences Skills Center, but a new building was built. You're saying it's at Lake Washington?
There's an allied health building at the Lake Washington, and it houses the WANIC offices and is a facility that students can take their medical careers.
So that's the building that was funded as a skills center? Because I remember the budget item, but I didn't know where exactly the building went up.
Yeah, so there's the one at the technical college, the Technical Institute, and then one of the other districts in the consortium is looking to build.
Right, the Snow Valley, okay,
that one.
right. Because these are separate facility construction line items in the construction budget that comes out of OSPI.
And the idea, since it's not all happening in one facility, it's more accessible to students. The idea would be it would probably be more of a challenge for students in Snoqualmie Valley to get to the Lake Washington Institute of Technology, just like it would be more challenging for our students to get there. So in this kind of a model, you can have the WANIC program happening in one of your schools or in a facility in the area, like DigiPen, which is on Willows. So that's more accessible to students probably in our district versus other.
For a lot of our districts, the technical, whatever it's called.
Well, it must have some decent buses.
A good location.
Because I drive down Willows a lot, and you can see the dump of bus every now and then of a bunch of kids walking and adults walking down towards DigiPen on Willows. So the bus system must be somewhat decent for them, because there are a lot of people that get there on foot, which may be helpful to have it there from others coming from other parts of the
I mean, on the surface, it looks like a really good partnership. How long have we had it? Long enough to know how it's going yet?
With DigiPen?
The DigiPen partnership?
Oh, the DigiPen partnership? I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say about 3 years, but.
Very long.
Mm-hmm. And the director of WANIC has met with us and our high school principals and CTE director to get our input in terms of their strategic planning of what other programs would they like, and how can they help us build our programs in our schools. So it's definitely a strengthening partnership and collaboration with all of the districts and WANIC as the agency to help build the programs.
Do you happen to know what our enrollment is, as in how many Lake Washington School District students actually access it in any given year?
I have seen that data. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I can follow up in a brief on that.
That'd be great.
It would just be interesting to know if it's being accessed, and is that increasing? and what fields are being utilized, because that can help to drive what that strategic plan is, because it definitely is a pathways, is something we talk about with signature programs, and that's another component to be able to start.
I'm kind of curious of where the kids are coming from, too. Are they more kids coming from any particular site or location versus others that are not accessing as much?
Well, and how long has it been set up as WANIC? I don't, how long has this been set up, the WANIC itself?
I know it wasn't NEVAC last year, so it's been a couple of years.
It's been several years.
Yeah, it's been several years at the name change, yeah.
3 or 4
3 or 4,
years.
Janine's saying back there. Yeah, it's been not too long, or whatever. Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's great. That was a great update. Doug, legislative, even though they're done
Yeah,
for now.
they're done, and
getting ready to go to election
they're-
season.
They're moving into election mode. But one thing that is pertinent for us, our consideration, and I'll leave it with Tracy, is just got a form in the mail for the 2013 session, legislative session, and if we want to do anything through WASDA, and, you know, in the past we did this, I think Ravi had an idea. The deadline for submitting something to WASDA is May 18th. So if we come up with something between now and then that we want to have WASDA take a look at, those are all the guidelines and considerations. But there might be something we want to do just to kind of make a point, you know, with our
That was Ravi.
friends.
He had an issue, and we made him keep writing.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but, you know, a lot of the things that we suggest aren't taken very far. But, you know, there may be something that we want to kind of wave the flag about. So that's really all I have.
Okay. I have board follow-up. I want to couple this with debrief. Appreciate very much the follow-up on what was from the last meeting to this meeting. I think that's really helpful to have that take place and, you know, and be pretty current and in the public setting, since the questions came up in a public setting. So I think really appreciate doing that. Board, any other follow-up items that we want to put on the list that we have? Okay.
Just the whole ends results and the work goals. I think we were talking about
Right,
putting
and
that into June.
And we're looking at putting it on the work session in June with the
Okay.
linkage, because that's the one we have. Otherwise, it's adding a day to do it. So I think we can couple it with linkage pretty easily. So any future agenda items other than a work session item there? Any other debrief? I also want to thank Forrest for the facilities update. He did a
We're
really
going
nice
to take a minute to talk about our experience at
Yes,
NSBA.
that'll be next one,
Okay.
board member comments. Doug and I were in NSBA in Boston and went to good sessions, and I, you know, with the hour, I don't want to spend a lot of time. The one thing that I was most appreciative of was they're having all of the presentations, PowerPoints available online to share back without having to capture a bazillion stacks of paper that nobody will read.
Right.
And the fact that they're easy to go through by looking at, if it's an interesting topic, you can kind of glance through several slides and say, does this relate to us or not? And so I've sent them to Tracy, I've sent some to Matt, and I just, to me, that was, and I commented on the survey from them. They've been really good about follow-up, about surveys and evaluations of what they're thinking about doing. They're actually toying with doing some online presentations of general sessions, and I'm thinking, I'm not sure I would go and listen to some of these people if you just put them online. I'm sorry. I mean, they're nice. I'm a captive audience. We're there. But, you know, am I going to take an hour to just sit and listen to them? Probably not. So I didn't think that was probably the best use of their whatevers. But they did a nice job. I think it was well attended.
I stood on the site, I think you probably did too, of the site of the first public school in the United States.
Yes, I did.
yes, I did.
There's
So it's a
prominently marked on a sidewalk. And
great city to
Downtown
have
Boston.
actually, I ran into a gentleman who was a history teacher who was there, and he was taking a half day to go and do the Freedom Trail, because he says, I should go back with some history that I've done and take that information back. So I found it very good. As I said, I've shared and got some other things that I'll share later with Tracy, but I won't go into any more detail tonight. So Doug?
No, I think similar. I think it was, gone to a few of these, and always pick up something new. I mean, it was, we heard from, I'm trying to think of his name, Saul Khan, who is fascinating. I mean, he's done a lot with, I'm trying to think of a term, it's really kind of digitalizing tutoring in a really effective way. And what was fascinating is he was showing examples of how he used it, and it was in my home elementary school district in Los Altos, California. But it's a whole kind of a social mediaization, I guess, if you will, of kind of traditional functions like tutoring. Yeah. And if you can really find an effective way, I guess, and I'm not the techie person, but apparently he's using YouTube to do a lot of this stuff, and that there's some limitations to using YouTube. So I think once some of those things are overcome, some of these techniques are going to be really easily accessible, and I think that's something that, I know that Jackie's already spoken to Tracy about them, but I think some pretty compelling stuff.
He's does a lot with math and science, and just recently heard that a lot of our kids in high school and AP classes use his online stuff all the time, off the classroom stuff, but just looking at him more in the safety net arena too, and how that might be able to be incorporated. So I've sent both Matt and Tracy information from there, but I also sent you both the TED, he did a TED speak that just was recently floating around, and so I'm hoping, I didn't look at it, but I'm hoping it's similar to what he spoke to us, because I think listening to him is somewhat interesting too, because his whole point is not to usurp the classroom teacher. That is not what this is all about. And I'm still fascinated that his site is free. I'm having a problem with, free. I mean, for schools, it's free. He doesn't charge, and I'm just...
Oh, for anybody, it's free.
Yeah,
You just
I know.
go to the internet,
Yeah, but it's just
khanacademy.com.
like, it's hard to believe that in this day and age, when you're wanting to get into doing that stuff, you don't
But I think
charge.
the thing that Jackie and I both found compelling is that, I mean, here's some, again, individualized instruction that a teacher could utilize to really help, leverage resources to help a kid. And I think that's really valuable.
There's been some interesting things done in the sense of flipping how the teacher role occurs, where they're using that, you have them watch that at home.
Yes.
And then when they come to school, then they have the chance to do the application of the material at school, which gives the whole a different role. So it's a whole interesting way of looking
Precisely.
at delivery of information versus application of information. And so
And
it
that's-
can really shift things.
That's what he's doing with some schools in California that he's actually partnered up with. But anyway, just thinking about it is, even if beginning, look at how do we do, is there any way to use it when we're trying to help kids who are struggling in certain concepts. But he does some good anecdotes and good stories, and so he was very good. Enjoyed him a lot.
And I heard a couple of things, one from Doug Reeves on system change, and one of his associates. And it's always good to kind of keep up on what he's a real education research junkie to the 10th degree. But a lot of good stuff that kind of keeps you current. And then I heard a presentation by a person named Joel Sprang, who's a Native American who is also an education historian, among other things. And it was interesting to hear his perspective about education reform and how it's impacting different cultural communities, and so it's always good to get that perspective as well.
So, as I said, I was glad to have a better way to share with all of you than to just
the few that we actually sit in, to be able to say there's more out there. And they had quite a few on Common Core standards, various aspects, and, the typical ones that you see, but I think overall they had quite a few presentations. They do quite a few in a day. So,
Yeah,
and next year is a joint with the superintendents
San Diego.
in San Diego, about the middle of April.
Yeah, I was going to say, I attended a couple of things on federal relations and kind of what the feds have planned for us to impose on us next.
That was interesting, too.
And I was also going to add, I was, a lot of times the meetings of the KCTS Channel 9 Advisory Board interfere with or coincide with board meetings, so I can't always go, but went to one last week, and again, their financial strength continues to grow, and I think you're going to see more examples of more locally generated programming.
Oh, good. It's nice to hear that they've
very
kind
much
of done a
in-depth, too,
turnaround,
so.
really.
Yeah, no, it's been really remarkable, and so you're going to see more good stuff.
And it doesn't hurt when you have Downton Abbey, one of the top series out there, and everybody under the sun is finally watching PBS. So that was good.
And their current remake of Sherlock Holmes.
Yes, who won awards in Britain for their role in that. Totally aside there. Okay. Any other board comments?
I have one on pertussis,
Oh, yes.
also known as whooping cough, for anybody listening out there.
Didn't you try to bring that to us a year or two ago?
Yeah, I remember when you had it.
You had it.
I had it 10 years ago.
No. it
That
was-
long?
Yes, it was
10
10 years ago. The
Wow,
year,
time flies.
the year I went back to
Boy,
work.
It sure has. I remember when
And I
you were
remember you were trying to
quarantined.
share it with us.
I did well, at least once I got diagnosed, or diagnosed myself, I did let everybody I know in the past 3 weeks I've been in contact with know. So, but I now work for the Department of Health, and this has become a huge issue, as some of you might know. And we have had some cases in our schools, and I did note that we had activated our environmental cleaning procedures, which is very nice, and I'm sure it will make people feel good, but it won't do a bit of good. I just want people to know that there is only one way that pertussis or whooping cough is transmitted, and that is direct contact with somebody's spit who actively has a case, which means within the first 1 to 3 weeks of them coming down with it. Now, I don't have a lot of concern for adults. Adults will get over it on their own. They will have done damage that will take 6 months to get over, so you will be coughing for 6 months, and you will be tired, and you will be miserable. But it is deadly for babies, and it is deadly for babies who cannot yet be vaccinated especially. Adults don't generally whoop. I only whooped once. I was being very clinical when I whooped, because I already knew I had whooping cough, and it was very interesting. You absolutely cannot breathe while you are whooping. This is what, if you can imagine a baby coughing without control who cannot breathe, this is why we have a vaccine. So we really, and now we know that the vaccines we have do not last as long as we had hoped. We need children to get revaccinated, and we do have that on a schedule, and we need adults to get revaccinated. I did not let my husband go back east to visit his brand-new grandniece who was just born without making sure he was vaccinated with a tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis. So they've added the pertussis back into the tetanus, diphtheria vaccine for adults. It's called a Tdap. So please, we're not exaggerating it. It may not be a big deal for adults, but it's deadly for babies. And we need the herd immunity because the vaccine is not as effective as we wish. It's not like 100%. And so the only other thing we need is for people when they think they're coming down with a cold, because unfortunately the symptoms for pertussis when it starts is just like a cold. I literally took 3 weeks before we realized something really weird was going on when I had it. That's very typical for adults and adolescents. And people don't stay home with colds.
So we need people to be extra cautious now that we know so much of it is going around, and just cover that cough and stay home and see your doctor and get the vaccine. Because I'm very big on cleaning. This is what I teach. And it's lovely for many things, but it's not going to help us with pertussis.
And it doesn't help that the state of Washington has got one of the worst compliance
Vaccination
records for vaccination of our children. And that's part of the reason we have the problem we have today, is that if you don't get vaccinated and get excused from vaccinations, that is an issue, and the state has got a horrible track record.
We desperately need a more effective vaccine, but that's years down the road. But at least if we had more vaccination because of that, what we call herd community in the profession, we would have a lot less incidence of it. But it's devastating when a baby gets it.
I'll entertain a motion before I do that. Our next board meeting is May 21st at 5:30, and then we will have a work session after that, and we'll be entering into our budget and budget planning time of year. So entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Our meeting is adjourned. It's just because I like to wrap that thing.